Sands of forgotten voices. Buried beneath shifting dunes lie enigmas older than empires. The desert has always been more than an empty expanse. Beneath its rippling dunes lie enigmas older than the earliest kingdoms, buried in silence so deep it seems almost alive. Each gust of wind reshapes the surface, but below, layers of forgotten worlds remain entombed, fragments of lives, rituals, and knowledge that time has chosen not to share easily. In Egypt's western desert, far beyond the fertile banks of the Nile, scattered ruins hint at communities that once flourished in now inhospitable terrain. Mud brick walls half buried in sand, fragments of pottery, and collapsed columns appear like half-remembered sentences in a language long lost. Archaeologists believe some of these sites were trading outposts during the Old Kingdom, but local Bedouin traditions speak of something older, cities that spoke to the stars, places erased overnight as if swallowed by the earth itself. Among the most persistent legends is that of Zerzura, the White City. Hidden deep in a desert valley, its gates were said to be guarded by supernatural beings. European explorers of the early 20th century, like Laszlo Almasi, followed these stories with genuine seriousness. In the 1930s, Almasi's expeditions uncovered previously unknown routes, tombs, and ruins, lending weight to the possibility that fragments of the legend might be real. Mainstream research points to environmental change. Between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was not a barren sea of sand, but a lush savanna with rivers and lakes. Communities thrived, leaving behind rock carvings of cattle, dancers, and even boats at Gilf Kebir and Jebel Uwainat. When the climate shifted, deserts consumed these settlements, erasing their stories, yet some of the carvings depict celestial patterns and star charts whose meaning remains unclear. Scholars still debate whether these represent early astronomy, religious symbolism, or an older, inherited knowledge from an unknown source. One discovery underscores this puzzle: the Yuan Muhugiag child, unearthed in Libya's Fezzan region. Radiocarbon dating places the mummy at around 5,600 years old, centuries before Egypt's first pharaohs. The child's careful mummification, use of ochre, and ritual burial suggest sophisticated practices predating dynastic Egypt. Scholars still debate whether this represents independent innovation or cultural diffusion from a lost or little-known civilization. Below the dunes, radar surveys near Saqqara and Bahariya Oasis have detected regular geometric anomalies, shapes too structured to be natural. While excavation is slow and cautious, these patterns hint that significant structures may lie untouched beneath layers of sand. Some researchers quietly suggest entire buried settlements may one day emerge, rewriting regional history. The desert also speaks in its own way. Travelers report low hums and flute-like tones at night in certain basins. Modern science explains this as singing dunes, a resonance produced by cascading sand grains. But to ancient travelers, these sounds were supernatural, the voices of gods, ancestors, or hidden cities whispering beneath the surface. Greek chroniclers wrote of the desert speaking under the moon. Centuries later, occult groups would seize on these ideas, viewing the Sahara as a liminal zone between worlds. The sands do not give up their secrets easily. Scholars still debate whether legends like Zerzura are embellished memories of real places or purely mythic projections. But each discovery, a wall, a star chart, a buried mummy, adds weight to the sense that beneath these dunes lie chapters of human history far older than our written record. As the night settles over the desert, wind stills and stars blaze overhead with piercing clarity. In that silence, it's easy to imagine the forgotten voices still there, waiting patiently beneath the sand for someone to listen again. Blueprints of the gods, monuments echo a precision that modern minds still chase. At the edge of the Nile, where the fertile river meets the desert's hard boundary, rise structures so exact, so deliberate, that their geometry still humbles us thousands of years later. These monuments, colossal in scale, yet crafted with uncanny precision, suggest an understanding of mathematics, engineering, and celestial movement that feels both familiar and impossibly advanced. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, completed around 2560 BCE, dominates this conversation. It's not merely the size, though 2.3 million stone blocks averaging 2.5 tons each is staggering enough. It's the precision. The base is nearly a perfect square, with an error margin of less than 2 inches across 13 acres. The pyramid is oriented almost perfectly to true north, more accurately than the Meridian building in modern Greenwich, and its sides align with the cardinal directions to a degree of accuracy that baffles many modern engineers using only the tools believed to have been available at the time. Mainstream Egyptologists explain this through meticulous planning and simple tools: ropes, plumb bobs, sighting rods, and the observation of circumpolar stars. Skilled labourers, not slaves, worked in rotating crews supported by a vast administrative system. Yet some measurements push the boundaries of explanation. The Great Pyramid's height to base ratio approximates 2p, suggesting an awareness of complex mathematical constants. Scholars still debate whether this was intentional or a remarkable coincidence born from practical proportions. Beyond Giza, this precision repeats. Temples at Karnak, Luxor, and Abu Simbel align with solstices and equinoxes so perfectly that, even today, shafts of sunlight illuminate hidden chambers on exact dates. In Abu Simbel, twice a year, the morning sun penetrates deep into the Ter, Empel's inner sanctuary, lighting statues of Ra, Amun, and Ramses himself, but leaving the figure of Ptah, god of the underworld, in shadow. This exact solar choreography suggests not just architectural brilliance, but a deep integration of religion, astronomy, and statecraft. A more enigmatic example lies in the Osirian at Abydos. This subterranean temple, discovered in the early 20th century, differs radically from the ornate New Kingdom temples above it. Massive granite blocks, megalithic in scale, form a layout eerily reminiscent of Giza's precision, but lack inscriptions. Some fringe theorists claim the Osirian predates dynastic Egypt by millennia, seeing it as evidence of an earlier unknown civilization. Mainstream archaeologists place it in the reign of Seti Pint, Smasti 1290 BCE, but acknowledge its unusual archaic style. Scholars still debate whether this was intentional archaism, a deliberate throwback to ancient forms, or a clue to something older. The question isn't whether ancient Egyptians were brilliant, they were, but how widespread such precision was, and why. Many monuments appear to follow a sacred blueprint, a system of proportions, astronomical alignments, and symbolic geometry repeated over centuries. Some researchers see this as cultural continuity. Others, especially in occult circles, view it as the survival of a divine architecture passed down from a lost source. Occult traditions often refer to this architectural precision as blueprints of the gods, a phrase implying that humans were not the sole designers, but recipients of a cosmic pattern. While such claims remain speculative, they reflect genuine astonishment at the monument's accuracy. Even modern construction would struggle to replicate Khufu's pyramid using only the documented techniques of the Old Kingdom. There are also quirky details. For example, certain chambers within the pyramids produce distinctive acoustic resonances, tones that some suggest were deliberately engineered. In the king's chamber, a low hum occurs when specific frequencies are sung or played. Some fringe theorists link this to ancient sound technologies, while most Egyptologists attribute it to the geometry of the chamber itself. Scholars still debate whether these acoustic phenomena were accidental or an intentional part of ritual design. As the sun sets over the Giza plateau, the shadows cast by these monuments stretch like sundials across the sand. Their angles, proportions, and alignments seem less like the work of trial and error, and more like chapters of a silent manual, one that our modern minds are still learning to read. The drowned kingdom's lament, whispers of a sunken world ripple through myth and memory. For over 2 millennia, the story of a lost civilization beneath the waves has haunted the human imagination. It began with a philosopher, not a poet. Around 360 BCE, Plato described in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias a mighty island kingdom named Atlantis, a place of grand temples, concentric harbours, and a people who grew both powerful and prideful. In his account, Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune, sinking beneath the sea. Many scholars have long treated Atlantis as an allegory, a cautionary tale about hubris, yet the details Plato provides are unusually specific: geographical descriptions, political systems, even measurements. This has led generations of researchers, mainstream and fringe alike, to wonder whether behind the myth lies a distant cultural memory of a real event. One compelling possibility is the Thera eruption around 1600 BCE. On the Aegean island of Santorini, ancient Thera, a massive volcanic eruption devastated the Minoan civilization. Tsunamis swept across the Mediterranean, reaching Crete and possibly the Nile Delta. Archaeological excavations at Akrotiri, a Minoan city buried in ash, reveal multi-story buildings with advanced plumbing, colourful frescoes, and a thriving maritime culture, eerily reminiscent of Plato's description of a sophisticated island society. Scholars still debate whether memories of Thera's destruction were passed down through oral traditions and later woven into Plato's narrative. But the Atlantis puzzle stretches far beyond the Aegean. Throughout history, explorers have proposed dozens of locations: the Azores, the Caribbean, Antarctica, the Black Sea, even within the Sahara. One particularly persistent theory points to the Richat structure in Mauritania, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. This NC circular formation resembles Plato's description of concentric rings. While geologists identify it as a natural eroded dome, aerial images have fueled speculation that it may have inspired the legend, or perhaps even housed a forgotten civilization now erased by time. In recent decades, underwater archaeology has uncovered startling evidence that the coastlines of prehistory looked very different. Sea levels were up to 120 metres lower during the last ice age. As glaciers melted, coastlines drowned, swallowing settlements. In places like Doggerland, a submerged plain between Britain and Europe, sonar mapping has revealed river systems, forest floors, and even traces of human occupation. India's Gulf of Kambat and Japan's Yonaguni structures have produced similar intrigue, where underwater formations look uncannily architectural. Scholars still debate whether these are purely geological or human-altered sites now lying beneath the waves. One particularly quirky detail involves medieval maps like the Piri Reis map, 1513, which shows parts of South America and an ice-free Antarctic coastline centuries before modern exploration. Some fringe theorists link this to survivors of Atlantis passing down ancient geographic knowledge. Mainstream historians attribute the anomalies to map compilers using older, possibly distorted source charts. But the map remains one of those curious artifacts that refuses to fit neatly into the timeline. Occult traditions took the Atlantis story in another direction entirely. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, groups like the Theosophists claimed Atlantis was not merely a civilization but a spiritual epoch, an age when humanity wielded forgotten powers. Secret societies reimagined Atlantis as both origin and warning, the cradle of ancient occult wisdom and the grave of those who misused it. Modern science remains cautious. No definitive archaeological site has proven the existence of a singular Atlantis. Yet as sonar mapping improves and submerged coastlines are explored, the possibility of discovering advanced prehistoric coastal cultures grows more tangible. Plato may have woven philosophy into his tale, but myths often carry kernels of memory, fossilized within story. As waves lap quietly against modern shores, it's tempting to imagine the drowned cities sleeping beneath, their stones encrusted with coral, their harbours filled with silence instead of ships. Scholars still debate whether Atlantis was pure invention, a distorted memory, or something stranger, but its lament continues to ripple through time, refusing to sink completely. Sanctuary before time. A temple complex predating history itself raises impossible questions. In the rolling plains of southeastern Turkey, where hills rise like gentle waves against a pale horizon, a site lay buried for millennia, untouched, undisturbed, and waiting. When Kurdish shepherds stumbled upon curious stone slabs in 1963, they could not have known they had found what would become one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Decades later, systematic excavations revealed Göbekli Tepe, a sprawling temple complex that has forced historians to rethink the story of civilization itself. Dated to around 9600 BCE, Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, and the Great Pyramid by 7,000. It was built during a time when, according to our established timelines, humans were still hunter-gatherers. Agriculture had not yet taken hold, cities had not been born, and written language was thousands of years away. Yet here, on a wind-swept hilltop, people quarried, carved, and erected enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circular enclosures that suggest deliberate planning and symbolic intent. Mainstream archaeologists view Göbekli Tepe as the work of organized groups of hunter-gatherers who gathered seasonally to build and worship. The site's elaborate carvings of animals, lions, vultures, scorpions, snakes, are rendered with striking detail, indicating both artistic skill and cultural sophistication. What's more, the builders buried the site intentionally around 8000 BCE, encasing the structures in layers of soil that preserved them for millennia. Scholars still debate why a people capable of such extraordinary feats would deliberately entomb their sanctuary. Göbekli Tepe raises fundamental questions about the birth of organized religion. The standard narrative suggests agriculture led to Permun, and settlements, which then gave rise to temples and religion. Here the order seems reversed, a temple before the city. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who led the excavations, famously argued that Göbekli Tepe may represent the spark that triggered civilization itself, that shared spiritual practices brought people together, necessitating the innovations that followed. Beyond its historical significance, Göbekli Tepe harbours mysteries that stray into the occult and astronomical. Some researchers have proposed that the layout of the pillars reflects constellations, particularly Orion and Sirius, and that the site functioned as an early observatory. One of the enclosures, labelled Enclosure D, aligns with the rising of Sirius around 9000 BCE, though the evidence is still debated. Others note that certain pillar carvings appear to form a symbolic map of the sky, as if recording celestial events. Scholars still debate whether these alignments were intentional astronomical observations or symbolic expressions without precise measurement. There are also quirky details. One pillar shows what some interpret as a headless man beside a scorpion, a scene unlike anything else from the era. Fringe theorists have linked this to mythic catastrophes, comet strikes, or encoded star lore, while mainstream scholars see it as a symbolic or ritual motif. Either way, It highlights how Göbekli Tepe's carvings are not random decorations, but structured iconography, part of a worldview we only glimpse through stone. Adding to the intrigue is the deliberate burial of the site. Unlike abandoned settlements left to decay, Göbekli Tepe was systematically filled in with soil and debris. Some occult traditions speculate this was a ritual closing of a sacred place, preserving its power for a distant future. Archaeologists propose more practical reasons: cultural shifts, migration, or changing religion. Here's practices. Scholars still debate the motives, but the act itself is undeniably extraordinary. The landscape around Göbekli Tepe is quiet today. Rolling hills, sparse trees, distant villages. Yet 9,000 years ago, this was a sacred sanctuary where people from vast regions may have gathered under starlit skies to carve stone and commune with forces they believed were larger than themselves. Göbekli Tepe stands as a temple before time, a monument erected by hands we thought were not yet capable of such grand visions. It whispers that the roots of civilization run deeper than we imagined, into a past where mystery and monument were already entwined. Clockwork from the abyss, a rusted relic, suggests ancient minds reached for the stars. In 1901, among the sunken timbers of a Roman-era shipwreck near the tiny Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers retrieved a corroded mass of bronze and wood. At first, it was dismissed as debris, an unremarkable lump encrusted with centuries of sediment. But when archaeologists began to carefully separate its fragments, they realized they were holding something extraordinary, a mechanism of gears, dials, and inscriptions so sophisticated that it would not be rivaled for more than a millennium. This object is now known as the Antikythera mechanism, and it dates to around 150 to 100 BCE. Composed of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, it could predict lunar phases, solar eclipses, planetary positions, and even the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. In essence, it's a mechanical computer, built centuries before such technology should have existed. Mainstream historians attribute the mechanism to Greek ingenuity during the Hellenistic period, a time when mathematics and astronomy flourished in centres like Rhodes and Alexandria. It may have been constructed by someone in the tradition of Hipparchus, the great astronomer, or possibly even by artisans working under Posidonius, a philosopher and scientist known for mechanical experimentation. Yet no other device of comparable complexity has ever been found from this era. The precision of its gear teeth, many less than a millimetre wide, suggests an advanced understanding of mechanics that should have required a broader technological infrastructure, yet no such lineage exists. Scholars still debate whether this was a singular genius creation or evidence of a now lost tradition of mechanical engineering. The Antikythera mechanism's capabilities are staggering. One dial tracks the metonic cycle, a 19-year period aligning lunar months with solar years. Another predicts eclipses using the Saros cycle, even indicating whether they would be visible as solar or lunar events. A small inscription instructs users how to set the device, implying it was designed for practical use, not just display. Modern reconstructions show the mechanism accurately modelling celestial motions using complex epicyclic gearing, a technique not rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance clockmakers of the 14th century. Among the more quirky discoveries, researchers found the device contains a pointer for the position of Venus and Mercury, adjusted through elaborate differential gearing. This suggests the maker not only understood basic astronomy, but could mechanically translate planetary cycles into rotational motion, a feat so ahead of its time that when the mechanism was first X-rayed in the 1970s, some experts refused to believe it was genuine. Fringe and occult theorists have naturally seized on this anomaly. Some argue the device reflects knowledge inherited from earlier, now lost civilizations, perhaps the same hypothetical culture that influenced sites like Egypt and Mesopotamia. Others weave it into narratives of Atlantean technology or ancient contact with non-human intelligences. While such claims remain speculative, the sheer gap between the Antikythera mechanism and anything else of its era fuels this intrigue. Mainstream scholarship doesn't need aliens to explain brilliance, but the absence of prototypes or successors remains a puzzle. How did such a device emerge fully formed, only to vanish again for centuries? Scholars still debate whether the mechanism was a rare luxury item, a teaching tool from a unique school of thought, or the last surviving artifact of a broader but lost technological culture. Its discovery underwater only deepens the mystery. The Antikythera wreck carried statues, luxury goods, and other treasures, perhaps loot bound for Rome. The mechanism may have belonged to a wealthy Greek patron or a scholar fleeing turmoil. Its journey ended on the seabed, where it waited nearly 2,000 years to astonish the modern world. Today, as digital scans reveal more inscriptions, we realize how much was packed into this rusted clockwork. It stands as a quiet rebuke to the idea that technological progress is linear. Somewhere in the workshops of the ancient world, minds were already reaching for the stars, and for reasons still unclear, that knowledge fell silent like a gear suddenly stripped of its teeth. Patterns on the desert skin, giant geoglyphs stretch across Earth like messages to heaven. High in the arid plains of southern Peru, where the ground is baked into a rusty brown canvas, vast figures sprawl across the desert floor. Lines as straight as arrows run for kilometers. Spirals swirl like cosmic diagrams. Enormous animals, a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey with outstretched tail, emerge when seen from above, their delicate outlines etched into the land itself. These are the Nazca lines, and they remain one of the most haunting enigmas of the ancient world. Discovered by the modern world in the 1920s, when Peruvian pilots flew over the region, the geoglyphs stretch across nearly 500 square kilometers. There are hundreds of lines, geometric shapes, and more than 70 biomorphic figures. Some lines run perfectly straight over uneven terrain for several kilometers, as if drawn by a giant ruler. Others form intricate figures so large that their full design is only visible from the air, a perspective the Nazca people, who created them between 200 BCE and 600 CE, supposedly never had. Mainstream archaeologists attribute the Nazca lines to religious and astronomical functions. Some lines appear to align with solstices, equinoxes, or celestial bodies, possibly serving as ritual pathways or giant calendars. Water is another key theme. In this desert, rainfall is scarce, and the Nazca engineered complex underground aqueducts. Some scholars propose the geoglyphs were part of ceremonies to invoke water, with people walking the lines in ritual processions. Scholars still debate whether the primary purpose was astronomical, hydrological, or symbolic. The construction method is deceptively simple. Workers scraped away the reddish top layer of pebbles to expose the lighter earth beneath, creating sharp contrast. The dry, windless climate preserved these designs for centuries. Yet the precision is staggering. Many straight lines stretch uninterrupted for kilometers. Figures are proportional and symmetrical despite their massive scale. Without aerial oversight or modern surveying tools, how did the Nazca achieve this? Some suggest they used basic grids, stakes, and ropes, techniques well within their abilities. Others see in the geometry something more enigmatic, hinting at a knowledge of large-scale planning that rivals modern surveying. Then come the quirky and fringe interpretations. In the 1960s, Erich von Däniken popularized the idea that the lines were ancient runways for alien craft, pointing to their sheer size and straightness. This theory, while dismissed by archaeologists, embedded itself deeply in pop culture. Others argue the lines were meant to be seen by gods from above, serving as offerings or messages to celestial beings. Still others imagine hot air balloons or elevated platforms used to view the designs, though evidence for such is limited. Scholars still debate whether the Nazca needed to see the full figures at all, or if their meaning was embedded in the act of walking them, like a prayer inscribed into the land. One particularly intriguing geoglyph is the astronaut figure, a humanoid shape with large eyes and a raised arm, perched on a hillside overlooking the plain. Its purpose is unknown. Was it a guardian, a storyteller, a symbol of myth? Its almost cartoonish outline contrasts sharply with the geometric precision of the lines below, as if multiple layers of meaning were inscribed over time. Occult interpretations frame the Nazca lines as earth sigils, vast ritual inscriptions meant to interact with cosmic forces. Some esoteric groups believe the desert itself was a ritual stage, the lines forming a communication network between humanity and higher powers. While speculative, these interpretations echo so anything real, the sheer intentionality behind the designs. They were meant to be seen, felt, or experienced in a way we still don't fully grasp. Standing on a viewing tower today, the hummingbird geoglyph spreads its wings across the desert floor, crisp and clear despite the passing centuries. The land is silent, the lines unchanged. Whether maps, prayers, calendars, or messages to the heavens, they remain as enigmatic as when they were first spotted from the air. A patterned skin upon the desert, whose meaning whispers just beyond our reach. Voices behind the veil, mysterious oracles spoke truths that shook ancient thrones. Across the ancient world, in places where smoke curled toward the heavens and silence was carefully cultivated, there were sites where the living came to speak with the divine, or perhaps more accurately, to listen. These were the domains of oracles, priestesses, and seers, who became conduits for messages from beyond the veil. Their words could shape armies, dethrone kings, or alter the course of empires. And yet the mechanisms behind these divine communications remain as elusive as the gods they claimed to channel. The most famous of these was the Oracle of Delphi, perched on the slopes of Mount Parnassus in Greece. From roughly the 8th century BCE to the 4th century CE, rulers and commoners alike travelled to this sanctuary to consult Pythia, the high priestess of Apollo. Seated on a tripod over a cleft in the earth, she would inhale sweet-smelling vapours, enter a trance, and speak in cryptic, often poetic phrases. Priests would then interpret her words for petitioners. These pronouncements were sometimes eerily precise. The Lydian king Croesus famously asked whether he should attack Persia. The oracle replied, "If you cross the river, a great empire will fall." Croesus took it as victory. It was, of course, his own empire that collapsed. Mainstream scholars now believe the vapours Pythia inhaled may have been ethylene gas, emitted from geological faults beneath the temple. Ethylene can produce euphoria, trance states, and slurred speech. Geological surveys in the 1990s confirmed fault lines and hydrocarbon residues beneath Delphi. Scholars still debate whether this was a deliberate choice of location by ancient builders aware of the vapours, or a fortunate coincidence that later acquired sacred meaning. But Delphi was not unique. Across cultures, oracular sites appeared with striking regularity. In ancient Egypt, the oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis delivered pronouncements in the temple's inner chambers. Alexander the Great famously journeyed through the desert to consult it, emerging to declare himself the son of Amun. In Mesopotamia, seers interpreted omens in animal entrails, celestial events, or dreams. In China, the Shang dynasty's diviners heated oracle bones, interpreting cracks to discern the will of ancestors. There were also necromantic oracles, where seekers spoke not to gods, but to the dead. In Epirus, Greece, at the Necromanteion, the oracle of the dead, visitors descended into subterranean chambers to undergo rituals involving darkness, chanting, and hallucinogens before hearing voices from beyond. Some historians interpret these as carefully orchestrated sensory manipulations, using acoustics and psychology to induce profound experiences. Others see genuine spiritual practices rooted in beliefs about porous boundaries between the living and the dead. Scholars still debate whether these rituals were elaborate theatrical experiences, sincere religious practices, or some blend of both. A quirky detail about Delphi. Ancient writers noted that when the oracle did not sit over the cleft, no prophecies were uttered. This dependence on a natural phenomenon made the site both uniquely powerful and vulnerable. Earthquakes could alter the fissure's activity. When the vapours stopped flowing in late antiquity, the oracle fell silent. It's as if the earth itself decided when Apollo would speak. Occult traditions later romanticized oracles as intermediaries between worlds, not merely religious figures, but vessels for cosmic forces. In Renaissance Europe, secret societies studied oracular texts, believing that ancient seers tapped into universal consciousness or astral planes. The idea of a veil between worlds, thin at certain sacred sites, persists in mystical circles to this day. Imagine standing at Delphi at dawn, the marble columns catching the first light, the air cool and still. Pilgrims gather in hushed reverence. Inside, a woman sits above the fissure, her voice rising in fragmented verses that ripple through the temple. Were these divine messages, chemically induced visions, or both? Whatever their source, the words of oracles shaped real history. Empires rose and fell on the strength of their utterances. Voices behind the veil, whispering through time, the lost relics trail. A sacred artifact disappears into legend, leaving echoes behind. For centuries, stories have circled like vultures over deserts, mountains, and monasteries, all pointing toward a single, elusive object, an artifact said to carry both divine authority and unimaginable power. It is the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred chest described in the Hebrew Bible as the container for the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, Aaron's rod, and manna from heaven. Said to be constructed under divine instruction, the Ark occupied the holiest chamber of the Temple of Solomon. Then, suddenly, it vanished from history. Its trail, like a candle guttering out in a vast cavern, leaves only echoes. Mainstream historians place the Ark in the first temple in Jerusalem, built by King Solomon around the 10th century BCE. It was the focal point of Israelite worship, the seat of divine presence. When the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem in 587 BCE, they destroyed the temple and carried its treasures to Babylon. Yet curiously, the Ark is not listed among the spoils in any surviving records. After this moment, the historical trail grows cold. Scholars still debate whether the Ark was destroyed, hidden, or carried away before the Babylonians arrived. One enduring mainstream theory is that priests concealed the Ark in a hidden chamber beneath the Temple Mount, a labyrinth of tunnels that even today remains largely inaccessible due to political and religious sensitivities. Another is that it was taken to Babylon and lost amid the chaos of exile. But alongside these grounded theories flourish a tangle of occult and fringe narratives that stretch across continents. Perhaps the most famous of these points to Aksum, Ethiopia, where the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims the Ark has been housed for centuries in the Church of Our Lady, Mary of Zion. Only one guardian monk is allowed to view it, and no outsider has ever verified its existence. Each year, during the festival of Timkat, replicas of the Ark, called tabots, are paraded through the streets, reflecting the deep cultural and spiritual hold the story maintains. Whether the original ark lies inside the church's modest chapel or not remains unproven, yet the claim has persisted for hundreds of years. Scholars still debate whether the Ethiopian tradition preserves a genuine ancient migration of the relic, or if it emerged later to legitimize Aksum's Christian kingship. Other theories are even more unusual. Some suggest the ark was taken to Elephantine Island in Egypt by Jewish refugees, merging its legacy with local religious practices. A few medieval legends whisper of the Knights Templar discovering the ark beneath the Temple Mount during the Crusades and spiriting it away to Europe, perhaps to Chartres Cathedral, perhaps to a secret vault. Modern treasure hunters have scoured the hills of Judea, the catacombs of Rome, and even Oak Island in Nova Scotia in search of it. The ark's mystique is not only religious but technological. Biblical descriptions speak of it emitting deadly power when touched by the unworthy, striking down those who mishandled it. Some fringe theorists interpret these passages as references to an ancient energy device, a kind of divine capacitor. Occult traditions describe the ark as a gateway, a physical anchor for divine presence, possibly constructed with materials and knowledge now lost. Scholars still debate whether these dramatic descriptions were metaphorical expressions of holiness, cultural memories of real phenomena, or exaggerated legends. One quirky historical footnote involves the Roman general Titus, who destroyed the Second Temple in 70 CE. Roman records list various treasures carried back to Rome, the golden menorah, silver trumpets, but once again no mention of the ark. If it still existed then, it was either hidden anew or had already vanished centuries before. Today the ark lives on as both sacred symbol and historical puzzle. In Aksum, a lone guardian keeps vigil over a small chapel, claiming to watch the true relic. Beneath Jerusalem, tunnels remain unexplored, locked beneath centuries of tension. And in libraries, monasteries, and secretive societies, scrolls and whispers continue to map the ark's vanishing trail. Somewhere between sacred history and legend, between the earthly and the divine, the ark slipped from view. Whether it lies in a hidden chamber, a distant land, or nowhere at all, its absence has become as powerful as its presence once was. A relic lost, but never forgotten. Echoes of distant pyramids, separated by oceans, civilizations mirrored each other's monumental dreams. All across the globe, rising like stone echoes of one another, stand pyramids, monumental structures built by cultures that, according to conventional history, never met. From the Nile Valley to the jungles of Mesoamerica, from China's plains to the Sudanese desert, these pyramid-building civilizations emerged independently, separated by oceans, languages, and thousands of years. And yet, their architectural visions converge in ways that continue to puzzle both scholars and mystics. The Egyptian pyramids, especially those at Giza, are the most iconic, smooth-sided stone mountains built during the Old Kingdom around 2600–2500 BCE. They served as tombs for pharaohs and as cosmic symbols, their shape representing the rays of the sun. But halfway across the world, Mesoamerican cultures such as the Maya, Aztecs, and their predecessors erected stepped pyramids centuries later. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, completed around 200 CE, rivals the Great Pyramid of Giza in size. The Maya city of Tikal boasts towering temple pyramids rising from the jungle canopy, each aligned to celestial events. Mainstream archaeology attributes these similarities to convergent cultural evolution. Pyramids are structurally stable ways to build tall monuments using stone and human labour. The shape emerges naturally when societies attempt to reach upward with limited technology. Yet some details strain simple explanation. The orientation of pyramids toward cardinal directions, the integration of astronomical alignments, and the role of these monuments in both cosmic and funerary rituals recur with striking consistency. Scholars still debate whether these parallels are coincidence, evidence of universal symbolic archetypes, or something more complex. In China's Shanxi province, hundreds of pyramidal burial mounds lie partially hidden under farmland. Some, like the tomb of Emperor Wu of Han, 2nd century BCE, are immense, and a few resemble step pyramids more than simple mounds. The White Pyramid legend, popularized by 20th century pilots, spoke of a gleaming giant structure covered in white stone, though official Chinese archaeology has restricted access to many of these sites, preserving them for future generations. Then there are the Nubian pyramids of modern-day Sudan. Between 800 BCE and 300 CE, the kingdom of Kush built over 200 pyramids at Meroe and Napata, more numerous than Egypt's. Though smaller and steeper, they clearly reference Egyptian traditions while developing their own distinct style. They mark royal burials and suggest a cultural dialogue across borders, showing how the pyramid as a sacred shape travelled and transformed through time. A quirky case lies in the Bosnian pyramid claims. In the early 2000s, a local entrepreneur declared a cluster of hills near Visoko to be the remains of massive man-made pyramids predating all known civilizations. While mainstream geologists insist these are natural formations, the controversy sparked international attention and renewed fascination with global pyramid traditions. Scholars still debate whether the Visoko site contains genuine archaeological layers or is purely geological, but the fervour surrounding it shows how powerful the pyramid archetype remains in our imagination. Occult and fringe theorists take these global parallels further. Some suggest that pyramids are remnants of a single lost civilization, perhaps Atlantean or otherwise, that seeded architectural knowledge across continents before dispersing. Others claim the shape itself channels telluric or cosmic energy, acting as amplifiers for spiritual forces. Ideas echoed in some esoteric traditions where pyramid shapes are used for meditation or preservation. While such theories remain unproven, they reflect a deep sense that these monuments hold more than stone within their sloping sides. Consider this. In Egypt, pyramids were linked to the afterlife and stellar ascent. In Mesoamerica, they were places of ritual sacrifice and cosmic renewal. In China, they were imperial tombs aligned to heavenly order. Across these disparate cultures, the pyramid form became a bridge between the living and the dead, the earthly and the celestial. Scholars still debate whether these shared impulses emerged independently or reveal forgotten connections, but the echoes are undeniable. Standing before a pyramid, whether under the desert sun or jungle mist, one feels the same quiet awe. These structures seem to speak across time and space, resonating with something deep in the human psyche. Oceans may separate them, but their message endures, to reach upward, to endure, to whisper to the stars. The weathered guardian, a colossal face watches the sands, older than its kingdom. At the edge of the Giza plateau, where the desert meets the fertile Nile valley, a massive figure sits silently, its gaze fixed eastward toward the rising sun. Its leonine body stretches nearly 73 meters, carved from the bedrock itself, while its enigmatic human face towers over the sands. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza, one of the most enduring and perplexing monuments on Earth, a guardian whose true age and purpose remain cloaked in debate and mystery. Mainstream Egyptology attributes the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafra, builder of the second pyramid at Giza, around 2500 BCE. The Sphinx's face, many argue, bears Khafra's likeness, and the monument's alignment with his pyramid complex suggests a unified architectural plan. The Sphinx may have served as a symbol of royal power, fusing human intelligence and leonine strength, a divine sentinel watching over the necropolis. Yet not everyone agrees. In the late 20th century, geologists like Robert Schoch argued that the Sphinx's heavily eroded body shows signs of water weathering rather than wind and sand. Egypt has not seen rainfall at the levels needed to produce such patterns since long before Khafra's reign. This led to the controversial suggestion that the core of the Sphinx could be thousands of years older, perhaps dating to a wetter climatic period around 7000 to 5000 BCE. Mainstream Egyptologists counter that the erosion can be explained by a combination of factors, including localized flooding and poor restoration. Scholars still debate whether the weathering patterns point to deep antiquity or simply centuries of exposure and repair. Adding to the intrigue is the head-to-body proportion. The Sphinx's head is noticeably small compared to its massive body, leading some researchers to suspect that the face may have been recut from an earlier, larger lion head. This theory, while speculative, could explain the monument's uneven proportions and hint at an even older original structure later modified during Khafra's time. The Sphinx has also been the subject of ritual and religious associations for millennia. In the New Kingdom, more than 1,000 years after its supposed construction, Pharaoh Thutmose IV placed a stela between its paws, recounting a dream in which the Sphinx promised him kingship if he cleared the sands from its body. This dream, stela, not only records the earliest known restoration of the Sphinx, but also cements its role as a living oracle, capable of speaking to those deemed worthy. One quirky detail that fuels mystery is the legend of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx. Ancient texts spoke of halls of records, a mythical library containing the lost knowledge of the ancients. Modern surveys with ground-penetrating radar have indeed detected anomalies and cavities beneath and around the monument, though most have been explained as natural fissures or routine construction trenches. Nevertheless, the idea of a secret archive beneath the Sphinx has captured the imagination of occult societies and alternative historians alike. Scholars still debate whether any yet unexplored spaces might yield new insights, or if the halls of records are purely symbolic mythology. Occult traditions have elevated the Sphinx into a symbol of cosmic guardianship. In some esoteric philosophies, the human head represents consciousness, the lion's body represents earthly power, and the hybrid form stands as a gatekeeper between worlds. In medieval and Renaissance mysticism, the Sphinx became a cipher for hidden knowledge, a riddle carved in stone that challenges humanity's understanding of time. Today, the Sphinx endures as both monument and mystery. The soft limestone has weathered under millennia of wind, sun, and shifting sands. Its nose is famously missing, likely destroyed by iconoclasts centuries ago, yet its presence remains immense, radiating silent authority. Scholars still debate the true age, original face, and hidden structures of the Sphinx. Was it born in the age of Khafra, or carved by an unknown culture in a wetter forgotten epoch? Was its gaze meant for the rising sun, the stars, or something else entirely? As dawn light touches its weathered face, the Sphinx seems almost to stir. For over 4 millennia, it has watched empires rise and fall, sandstorms pass, and theories accumulate like layers of dust at its feet. It remains the weathered guardian, a silent riddle staring eternally toward the horizon. The codex no one can read. An illustrated puzzle continues to defy every linguistic key. In the quiet, climate-controlled vaults of Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Manuscript Library lies a manuscript unlike any other. 240 vellum pages of strange, looping script accompanied by vivid, almost otherworldly illustrations. Known as the Voynich manuscript, this book has confounded scholars, code breakers, linguists, and mystics for over a century. Its pages are a labyrinth of symbols, plants that do not exist, bathing women in celestial pools, and zodiac wheels unlike any known cosmology. It is, quite simply, a codex no one can read. The manuscript surfaced in 1912 when Polish antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich purchased it from Jesuit archives in Italy. Radiocarbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, firmly in the European Middle Ages. But nothing else about it fits neatly. Its script is entirely unique, flowing, organic characters written from left to right, with no obvious corrections or hesitations, as if the scribe were fluent in a language no one else has ever known. Mainstream scholars have approached it through every linguistic tool available: cryptographic analysis, statistical patterning, and historical comparison. The manuscript displays linguistic features, such as Zipf's law, common in real languages, suggesting it's not random gibberish. Yet, despite the efforts of World War II code breakers, modern AI models, and countless amateur sleuths, no translation has been universally accepted. Scholars still debate whether the text encodes a natural language, a cipher, an invented language, or a hoax crafted to fool Renaissance collectors. The manuscript is divided into sections that hint at purpose. The herbal section depicts plants, some identifiable, others fantastical hybrids. The astronomical and cosmological sections feature strange star maps and zodiac diagrams, often incorporating bathing nymphs connected by pipes and pools. The pharmaceutical section lists jars and roots in neat arrays, while the final pages resemble recipes. Some see in this a medical or alchemical manual, perhaps from a lost intellectual tradition. Others argue the illustrations are too fanciful for serious scholarship, suggesting either a spiritual text or deliberate deception. A particularly quirky mystery lies in the plants. While a few drawings vaguely resemble Mediterranean species, many are botanical chimeras, a leaf from one species attached to the flower of another. Some fringe theorists claim these depict plants from the New World, predating Columbus. Others suggest the artist was encoding knowledge allegorically, using botanical forms as symbolic language. Scholars still debate whether the images are meant to be read literally, metaphorically, or as part of a coded system. The occult fascination with the Voynich manuscript runs deep. In esoteric circles, it is often portrayed as a grimoire, a magical book written in a green language understood only by initiates. Renaissance occultists believed such languages held cosmic power, enabling communication with angels or unlocking hidden forces of nature. Modern mystics and conspiracy theorists have claimed the manuscript encodes alchemical formulas, alien star maps, or knowledge from a vanished civilization. Though lacking evidence, these interpretations persist because the manuscript refuses to yield under ordinary scrutiny. Mainstream hypotheses abound. Some suggest it was created by a single polymath, possibly as a private mnemonic device for scientific or medical knowledge. Others point to a sophisticated cipher, perhaps designed to protect heretical ideas. A few historians have proposed it's an elaborate hoax, crafted by a clever scribe to sell to wealthy collectors hungry for arcane secrets. But the sheer consistency and linguistic structure argue against simple fakery. Modern technology has made inroads but no breakthroughs. Multispectral imaging has revealed erased letters but no hidden plaintext. AI models have proposed possible languages, from Hebrew to Nahuatl, but none withstand close analysis. The author remains anonymous, the language undeciphered, and the purpose unclear. Scholars still debate whether the solution lies in cryptology, linguistics, cultural history, or an insight we've yet to have. To turn the Voynich manuscript's pages today is to confront a mind across centuries that deliberately built a barrier between us and its knowledge. The smooth vellum, the confident script, the strange stars and impossible plants, all speak of a coherent system, one we can see but not understand. It sits under glass now, inert and silent, yet somehow alive with mystery. In its looping lines are the fingerprints of a vanished intelligence, a whisper that, even in an age of machine learning and high-powered cryptanalysis, some secrets can still resist us completely. Stones aligned with the heavens. Circles and megaliths trace celestial rhythms we're still decoding. On a wide chalk plateau in southern England, shrouded in fog on cold mornings and bathed in long summer twilight, Stonehenge rises from the grass like a ring of silent sentinels. Massive sarsen stones stand upright in a circle, capped with horizontal lintels, while smaller bluestones form inner arcs. To approach it is to sense both engineering and ritual, both human hands and cosmic intention. Its shape is not random, its stones are not haphazard, they are aligned with the sky. Stonehenge was built over many centuries, from roughly 3000 to 1500 BCE, evolving through multiple construction phases. Its builders were Neolithic peoples with no written language, yet they hauled stones weighing up to 25 tons across miles of rugged landscape. Mainstream archaeology views the site as a ceremonial centre, a place where communities gathered for rituals marking seasonal cycles. The monument's alignment with the solstices, especially the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset, suggests a sophisticated understanding of the sun's annual movements. On the summer solstice, sunlight pierces the axis of the monument, passing over the heelstone and flooding the central altar area. The site's astronomical precision doesn't end with the sun. Researchers have identified alignments with lunar standstills, rare celestial events in the moon's 18.6-year cycle. This indicates that Stonehenge may have been not just a solar calendar, but a complex observatory for tracking celestial rhythms. Scholars still debate whether the site was primarily a ritual calendar, a sacred space for the dead, or a centre for astronomical observation, but it was likely all three, seamlessly intertwined. Stonehenge is not alone. Across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, ancient peoples erected stone circles, mounds, and egalithic alignments that track celestial events with uncanny precision. In Nebra Playa in southern Egypt, a circle of stones dating to around 5000 BCE aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, predating Stonehenge by millennia. In Chaco Canyon, the ancestral Puebloans carved the sun dagger into a rock face, where shafts of light mark solstices and equinoxes with mathematical accuracy. These sites reveal a global impulse to anchor time in stone, to make the sky's eternal rhythms tangible on Earth. One quirky discovery at Stonehenge involves acoustics. Studies have shown that the stone arrangement creates unusual echoes and resonances, amplifying sound in ways that could enhance ritual chanting or music. Some researchers speculate this was intentional, part of the sensory experience of ceremonies held there. Others think it's a coincidental byproduct of the circular layout. Scholars still debate whether Stonehenge was designed with sound in mind, or whether this effect was discovered and integrated later. Occult and esoteric traditions have long treated Stonehenge and similar monuments as star temples, places where heaven and earth meet. Renaissance mystics imagined druids in white robes conducting rites timed to cosmic harmonies. Modern New Age groups see these circles as energy nodes, part of a global grid. While such claims lack hard evidence, they reflect the enduring sense that these monuments were more than functional calendars. They were interfaces between people and the cosmos. The engineering achievement of Stonehenge also continues to inspire awe. Transporting the bluestones from Wales, over 200 kilometres away, required immense coordination. The lintels were shaped with mortise and tenon joints, a level of craftsmanship rarely associated with Neolithic societies. This was not the work of scattered tribes, but of organized, knowledgeable communities attuned to both the land and the heavens. Scholars still debate exactly how these societies conceived of time, cosmos, and ritual. Were the builders, priests, astronomers, or both? Did they simply track the solstices, or did they encode a philosophy of cosmic balance in stone? Standing inside the stone circle today, the modern world falls away. As the sun rises on the solstice, thousands gather in silence, waiting for that exact moment when sunlight breaks through the ancient axis, just as it did 4,000 years ago. For a heartbeat, past and present align, and the stones seem to speak again, not in words, but in light. The clay conduits, ancient jars, hint at an energy we barely understand. In the late 1930s, during routine excavations near Kujut Rabu, just outside Baghdad, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig uncovered a set of curious clay jars. Each vessel, about 13 centimeters tall, contained a copper cylinder, which encased an iron rod. The rod showed signs of corrosion, and traces of an acidic substance, perhaps vinegar or wine, lined the jar's interior. What seemed at first like simple storage vessels were soon recognized as something far more enigmatic. These artifacts became known as the Baghdad Batteries, and they have baffled historians and scientists ever since. Dating from roughly 250 BCE to 250 CE, during the Parthian or Sassanid period, these clay jars do not resemble any known lamps, storage containers, or ritual objects of their era. When Koenig examined them more closely, he noticed that their construction mimicked the essential components of a galvanic cell: an iron core, a copper sheath, and an acidic electrolyte. In modern experiments, replicas of the jars produced voltages of about 0.5 to 1 volt each. Strung together, they could create a usable electric current. Mainstream historians remain cautious. There is no textual evidence that the Parthians or their neighbours understood or used electricity in any way we would recognise. Most scholars believe the jars were probably used for plating objects with precious metals, perhaps through a primitive electrochemical process. Others argue they may have been storage containers for scrolls or sacred items, with the internal metal parts functioning as simple caps. Scholars still debate whether these were truly electrical devices, ritual objects, or something else entirely. The quirky part of this mystery is how close the jars come to mimicking modern batteries, without any clear reason. Some researchers have proposed that the sarcophagus might have been used to electroplate gold onto silver, creating thin, gilded surfaces for religious statues or jewellery. This would require not only the jars themselves, but wiring and a reliable electrolyte, none of which have been conclusively found. Others have pointed out that electroplated artifacts have not been definitively identified from the period, leaving the theory incomplete. Fringe and occult theorists have gone further. They argue that the Baghdad Batteries are evidence of lost scientific knowledge, perhaps inherited from earlier, forgotten civilizations. Some claim the devices powered sacred lamps or acted as spiritual batteries, charging ritual spaces with energy. In 19th century occult revivals, these jars were woven into speculative histories where ancient priesthoods harnessed unseen forces, a narrative that persists in popular media. Interestingly, the jars were discovered near Seleucia, an important cultural crossroads where Greek, Persian, and Mesopotamian traditions intermingled. This was a region of technical experimentation, from advanced glassmaking to hydraulic engineering, so the idea that craftsmen could have stumbled upon basic electrochemical reactions isn't implausible. Scholars still debate whether the Baghdad Batteries represent intentional innovation or accidental resemblance to modern technology. Modern tests have replicated their function convincingly. When filled with grape juice or vinegar, they generate small but steady currents. If connected in series, a dozen such jars could produce enough electricity to deliver mild shocks or plate small metal objects. yet no evidence of wires or terminals survives, leaving a critical gap in the story. The jars themselves are modest objects, unadorned clay now resting quietly in museums, but their implications are profound. Were these simply clever containers, or evidence of a glimmer of electrical experimentation centuries before the scientific revolution? Were they practical tools, sacred objects, or something we no longer have the context to understand? As we look back, the Baghdad Batteries remind us that technological sophistication isn't always linear. Sometimes knowledge sparks briefly, isolated and enigmatic, then disappears into the archaeological record without leaving a trail. Scholars still debate whether these were the world's first batteries or a coincidence of construction, but their mystery endures, humming faintly across the centuries like a forgotten current. Skulls of light, polished crystal heads inspire awe, skepticism, and whispered myths. In dimly lit museum cases and private collections, they gleam like frozen ghosts, perfectly carved crystal skulls, translucent and smooth, their hollow eye sockets catching the light like ancient lanterns. They are among the most captivating and controversial artifacts ever claimed to emerge from pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. Stories about them weave together archaeology, colonial history, occult mystique, and modern myth, forming a mystery that refuses to settle. The most famous of these objects is the so-called Mitchell-Hedges skull, allegedly discovered in the 1920s in the ruins of Lubanton, a Maya site in Belize. According to Anna Mitchell-Hedges, the explorer's adopted daughter, she found the skull beneath a collapsed altar during an expedition. Carved from a single block of clear quartz, it's nearly life-size, anatomically accurate, and polished to a mirror finish. When held up to light, it refracts through channels and prisms within the quartz, creating an eerie, luminous effect, hence the nickname Skulls of Light. Mainstream archaeologists, however, have raised serious doubts. Investigations in the late 20th century revealed no documented discovery records for the skull, and microscopic analysis of its tool marks suggests it was shaped with modern rotary tools, not pre-Columbian carving techniques. Many crystal skulls surfaced in the late 19th century, a period rife with European fascination for Mesoamerican artifacts, and, not coincidentally, with forgeries designed to meet collector demand. Scholars still debate whether some skulls might have genuine indigenous origins, or whether all are later fabrications dressed in romantic legends. Yet, even setting authenticity aside, the skill required to carve quartz with such precision is immense. Quartz ranks 7 on the Mohs hardness S scale, making it difficult to shape even with steel. Pre-Columbian peoples were capable stoneworkers, but carving a flawless skull with smooth surfaces and optical channels seems extraordinary. Some researchers argue that, if genuine, the skulls would have required hundreds of hours of painstaking work with sand abrasion and water. Others believe this level of polish and internal refraction points unmistakably to modern tools. Scholars still debate whether any of the known skulls could feasibly have been made with ancient techniques. The occult and mystical aura surrounding the crystal skulls took shape in the 20th century. Occult societies and New Age movements claimed these artifacts were Atlantean relics, storage devices for ancient wisdom, or even tools of communication with non-human intelligences. A widely circulated myth holds that 13 crystal skulls, when reunited, will reveal secrets of human destiny or activate hidden powers. While lacking evidence, these stories have proven remarkably durable, finding their way into books, documentaries, and pop culture. A particularly quirky twist came in 2008 when the British Museum tested its own crystal skull, purchased in 1897. Using electron microscopy, scientists found distinct traces of 19th century jeweller's wheels, confirming a European origin. Yet even after such debunking, the skull remains displayed, accompanied by explanations of its mysterious provenance, because the story itself is now part of the object's identity. Interestingly, Indigenous Mesoamerican cultures did use skull imagery extensively in their art and religion. The Aztec Tzompantli, or skull racks, and Maya carvings emphasize death's sacred role in cosmic cycles. Crystal skulls, whether ancient or modern, fit symbolically within this tradition, even if they don't literally emerge from it. This blurring of cultural authenticity and later myth-making has given the skulls an enduring, almost theatrical power. Occult traditions continue to treat the skulls as repositories of energy. Some spiritual practitioners claim that meditating with them induces visions, or that their quartz structure amplifies human consciousness, echoing beliefs about crystals more broadly. While science finds no evidence for such effects, the skull's luminous, uncanny presence undeniably evokes a response. Whether carved centuries ago in a Maya workshop or in a 19th century Parisian jeweler's studio, the crystal skulls occupy a space between artifact and myth. Scholars still debate their origins, their meanings, and their place in history, but under the display lights, their polished faces glow softly, like beacons from a world that may never have existed, or perhaps from one we have yet to fully understand. Secrets in the crucible. Alchemists and mystics chase immortality within ancient courts. Long before the word science existed, in shadowed chambers lit by oil lamps and glowing embers, men and women laboured over crucibles, flasks, and coded manuscripts. Their goal was both material and spiritual, to unlock the hidden laws of nature, to turn base metals into gold, to discover the elixir of immortality, and to commune with forces that lay beyond the veil of the ordinary world. Across continents and centuries, alchemists and mystics emerged in royal courts, temples, and remote monasteries, blending early chemistry with occult philosophy in ways that still echo today. In ancient China, the search for the elixir of life drove emperors and alchemists alike. During the Han and Tang dynasties, court alchemists experimented with cinnabar, mercury sulfide, believing it could grant immortality. Ironically, these mixtures often proved lethal, leading to mercury poisoning among elites, including the first Qin emperor, who died after consuming supposed immortality pills. Yet the practice endured for centuries, evolving into Taoist internal alchemy, cultivating spiritual immortality through meditation and energy circulation, a symbolic transformation of the self rather than matter. Scholars still debate how much of these practices were literal chemistry versus allegorical spiritual discipline. In the Greco-Egyptian world, particularly at Alexandria, alchemy took a different form. Hellenistic scholars like Zosimos of Panopolis, 3rd–4th century CE, wrote elaborate texts combining metallurgy, astrology, and mystical visions. He described laboratories where metals were dissolved and recombined, but also mystical journeys in which the alchemist's soul was purified alongside matter. His writings are among the earliest to use alchemical symbolism, the furnace as the human soul, the vessel as the cosmos. Scholars still debate whether Zosimos described actual experiments or symbolic spiritual allegories wrapped in technical language. Meanwhile, in the Islamic Golden Age, alchemy became a sophisticated intellectual pursuit. Figures like Jabir ibn Hayyan, known in the West as Geber, systematized chemical processes, distillation, crystallization, and acid production. His works influenced European alchemy for centuries. Though later occultists mythologized him as a magician, Jabir was also a meticulous experimentalist, blending philosophical mysticism with practical technique. One quirky footnote lies in the courts of medieval Europe. In the 13th century, alchemist Nicholas Flamel became a legendary figure reputed to have discovered the philosopher's stone. In reality, most stories about Flamel emerged after his death, turning him into a mythical immortal. His house in Paris still bears alchemical symbols, drawing esoteric pilgrims to this day. Occult traditions absorbed alchemy deeply, recasting it as a spiritual path rather than a proto-science. Renaissance thinkers like Paracelsus fused astrology, medicine, and alchemy, arguing that the universe and the human body mirrored one another, the macrocosm and microcosm entwined. For them, metals were not inert substances, but living entities evolving toward perfection. Gold symbolized divine consciousness, lead, the raw human soul. The philosopher's stone became not merely a substance, but a state of perfected being. Mainstream historians view alchemy as a precursor to modern chemistry, with its techniques eventually giving rise to laboratory science. But even within this view, the occult elements cannot be neatly stripped away. Alchemy's practitioners saw no separation between the physical and the metaphysical. To alter matter was to alter oneself. To discover nature's secrets was to converse with the divine. Scholars still debate how much practical chemical knowledge alchemists actually achieved versus how much existed in the realm of spiritual metaphor. One of the most enduring mysteries is how certain alchemical recipes, such as the creation of durable alloys, secret pigments, or transformative substances, appear in multiple civilizations, sometimes separated by vast distances. Were these parallel discoveries, or did esoteric knowledge travel along hidden intellectual networks preserved by priesthoods and secret societies? From imperial palaces to hidden laboratories, the alchemists pursued their work in secrecy and code. Their manuscripts are filled with enigmatic diagrams, serpents eating their tails, suns and moons entwined, crowned kings dissolving in vessels, meant to obscure their knowledge from the uninitiated. Many of these symbols still baffle scholars today. The crucibles have long gone cold, their contents turned to dust, yet their legacy persists. So see, in chemistry, in mysticism, and in the human drive to transcend limits. Scholars still debate whether the alchemists' greatest achievements lay in their material experiments, their spiritual insights, or the strange fertile ground between the two. Lines across the earth, monument alignments, fuel theories of a lost global order. If you lay a map of the world flat and begin tracing straight lines between some of the planet's most iconic ancient sites, something uncanny seems to emerge. Giza, Easter Island, Nazca, Mohenjo-Daro, Angkor Wat, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, all appear to align along certain longitudes and great circles. To some, these are mere coincidences, the inevitable result of connecting many dots on a spherical Earth, but to others, historians, fringe theorists, and occultists alike, these alignments hint at something more, a hidden geometry woven into the fabric of ancient civilization. This fascination with global alignments exploded in the mid-20th century when researchers like John Michel and Erich von Däniken popularized the idea of ley lines, straight paths connecting ancient monuments, believed to be remnants of a global network of energy or communication. Michel argued that these alignments reflected a prehistoric understanding of geomancy and Earth's natural power lines, while others framed them as evidence of lost cartographic knowledge or even advanced navigation long before the age of exploration. Mainstream archaeologists are skeptical. Ancient builders had local, not global, horizons. They aligned monuments to local celestial events, the rising sun, solstices, lunar standstills, using straightforward observational methods. Straight lines drawn across global maps are often artifacts of projection, not intention. Scholars still debate whether any large-scale planning existed, or whether our pattern-seeking minds are imposing modern frameworks onto disparate ancient sites. Still, the precision of certain alignments invites curiosity. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, sits almost exactly on the 30th parallel north and is aligned to true north with an error of only 3/60 of a degree. The Nazca lines align with celestial events and, in some interpretations, distant landmarks. The axis of Angkor Wat is oriented toward the solstice sunrise. These are local astronomical alignments, but when mapped globally, they appear to form striking geometrical relationships. One quirky example is the so-called Giza Easter Island line. Proponents of the theory note that if you draw a straight line on a Mercator projection, a surprising number of major sites fall close to it. However, on a globe, these sites are not perfectly collinear, suggesting much of the effect is visual projection. Scholars still debate whether there's any underlying significance or if these lines are products of coincidence magnified by selective mapping. Occult traditions, however, embrace the idea of a sacred geometry of the Earth. In some esoteric systems, the planet is envisioned as a living body with energy meridians similar to acupuncture lines. Ancient monuments, in this view, were deliberately placed on power nodes, amplifying spiritual or cosmic forces. Medieval and Renaissance mystics tied this concept to Platonic solids, imagining Earth as part of a cosmic architecture designed by divine intelligence. Though modern science finds no evidence for planetary energy grids, the concept persists as a powerful metaphor for hidden order. The navigation question is equally intriguing. Some researchers argue that to align distant sites with any accuracy would require knowledge of latitude and longitude, something mainstream history places firmly in the modern era. How could builders of Stonehenge, Angkor, or Machu Picchu have coordinated their locations with cultures oceans away? Most scholars suggest they didn't, that alignments across continents are simply the result of independent societies responding to similar celestial cues. Yet a small number of researchers propose that ancient cartographic knowledge, possibly preserved through oral traditions or secret networks, may have been more advanced than we think. Scholars still debate whether such knowledge ever existed, or whether we're mistaking mathematical coincidences for intent. What's undeniable is humanity's universal impulse to align. Across cultures, builders oriented their monuments with a mix of cosmic reverence and practical observation. Whether or not there was a single global plan, the cumulative effect of these choices is astonishing. A world etched with lines of meaning, where temples, pyramids, and geoglyphs mirror the heavens above. Today, satellite maps make it easy to draw connections across continents, but for the people who built these monuments, the alignments weren't abstract geometry, they were acts of devotion, anchoring their world to something larger. Whether by accident or design, the lines across the Earth continue to mesmerize, inviting us to wonder whether the ancients shared more than we have yet uncovered. Temples that sing. Sonic architecture resonates like forgotten instruments beneath ancient skies. Across the ancient world, some structures seem not only to have been built to be seen, but to be heard. In temples, tombs, and stone chambers scattered across continents, researchers have found that architecture itself was shaped to manipulate sound, to resonate, hum, echo, and amplify in ways that modern engineers are only beginning to fully appreciate. These are the temples that sing, monuments that turn stone into instruments, their acoustic mysteries suggesting an interplay between ritual, science, and spirituality now largely forgotten. One of the most famous examples lies deep within the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta. Dating to around 3600 BCE, this subterranean temple complex consists of chambers carved with startling precision. In its oracle room, a male voice chanting at certain frequencies sets the walls and air vibrating. The resulting sound can be felt in the body, creating a sensation of immersion and altered awareness. Modern acoustic studies have confirmed that the chamber amplifies frequencies between 90 and 120 Hz, a range that can induce trance-like states. Scholars still debate whether this was accidental or deliberately engineered, but the effect is unmistakable. Similarly, in the Mayan city of Chichen Itza, The Temple of Kukulkan, El Castillo, produces a startling effect when someone claps their hands at the base of the stairway. The echo bounces back as a chirping sound remarkably similar to the call of the Quetzal, a sacred bird. Acoustic analysis shows this is caused by the shape and spacing of the steps, which act like a sound filter. Whether intentional or serendipitous, the result would have been a powerful sensory experience during rituals, an interaction between architecture and environment that transcended sight alone. In Egypt, the key Ong's chamber inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu is another site of acoustic intrigue. When tones are produced within the chamber, either by voice or instrument, the space resonates powerfully at specific frequencies. Modern measurements reveal standing waves forming within the granite walls, amplifying sound in a way that's both unsettling and hypnotic. Some fringe theorists suggest this was part of a lost sound technology, perhaps linked to initiation rituals or energy manipulation. Mainstream Egyptologists are more cautious, suggesting that these effects were byproducts of the chamber's geometry. Scholars still debate whether these acoustic properties were deliberately designed or simply discovered and ritualized. A quirky discovery in the Andes reveals that Inca and pre-Inca temples often feature niches and canals that produce whistling or humming sounds when wind passes through. At sites like Chavín de Huántar in Peru, styled 1200 BCE, underground galleries with carefully positioned vents create an eerie auditory experience during ceremonies. Conch shell trumpets discovered there match the acoustics of the chambers perfectly, suggesting an intentional fusion of architecture and sound. Ritual participants would have been enveloped in swirling noise, disoriented and awed. Occult traditions have long linked sound to spiritual power. In many esoteric systems, specific frequencies are believed to open gates, invoke deities, or alter consciousness. Ancient Indian temples were designed with resonant sanctums to enhance the chanting of mantras. Tibetan monasteries use harmonic overtones to induce meditative states. Western mystical traditions later reimagined this as the music of the spheres, the idea that cosmic harmonies could be mirrored on Earth through architecture and ritual sound. Modern researchers in archaeoacoustics are beginning to systematically study these phenomena. Using microphones, frequency analyzers, and 3D modeling, they're finding that many ancient structures share specific acoustic signatures: resonance chambers, echo corridors, and amplification niches. Some effects are clearly intentional, others may have been discovered accidentally and integrated into ritual practice. Scholars still debate to what extent ancient builders possessed theoretical acoustic knowledge, or whether their understanding was more empirical and experiential. Standing in a temple that sings is profoundly affecting. A single chant can ripple through stone walls like a living force. In Malta's Hypogeum, visitors describe feeling the sound in their bones, as if the architecture itself were responding. At Chichen Itza, the Quetzal's call still echoes across the plaza, as it has for centuries. These temples remind us that ancient architecture wasn't just visual spectacle, it was total sensory design. By shaping sound, the builders shaped experience. Whether as instruments of ceremony, tools of altered consciousness, or simply brilliant feats of engineering, these sonic monuments continue to hum across millennia, whispering that the ancients may have understood the power of resonance in ways we are only just beginning to rediscover. The vanished archives, vast libraries were said to hold forbidden truths, now gone. Throughout history, knowledge has been both a light and a dangerous flame. In the ancient world, entire civilizations devoted themselves to gathering, guarding, and transmitting wisdom. Astronomical charts, medical treatises, philosophical dialogues, religious texts, and records of kingdoms long vanished. Yet many of these great archives disappeared, sometimes in fire, sometimes by conquest, sometimes simply swallowed by time. Their loss has created voids in history that have never been fully filled, leaving us to wonder what truths, technologies, or ideas might have been lost forever. The most legendary of these repositories is the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. Founded in the 3rd century BCE by the Ptolemies, it was intended to gather all the world's knowledge. Ships docking in Alexandria were reportedly required to surrender their scrolls, which scribes copied and added to the library. At its height, the library and its associated Mouseion may have held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, and beyond studied side by side, advancing mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. And then it was gone. Ancient sources disagree on exactly how. Some blame Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BCE. Others point to later Christian riots or the Muslim conquest centuries after. Modern historians believe the library likely declined gradually, suffering multiple incidents rather than one cataclysm. Still, the symbolic image of a single, devastating fire persists. Scholars still debate how much of humanity's ancient intellectual inheritance was truly lost and how much survived elsewhere in fragments. The Library of Alexandria was not alone. The Royal Library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, dating to the 7th century BCE, was another vast collection, its thousands of cuneiform Arum tablets preserved epic literature like the Epic of Gilgamesh, astronomical records, and administrative data. When Nineveh fell to the Babylonians and Medes, the library was buried in ruins. Ironically, the clay tablets survived the destruction and now offer priceless insights, but they represent just one surviving snapshot of a broader Mesopotamian intellectual world. What was lost remains immeasurable. One particularly quirky example is the Serapeum of Alexandria, a temple and library that held duplicate scrolls from the Great Library. When Christian zealots destroyed the Serapeum in 391 CE, they reportedly toppled statues and burned texts. Whether this represented the final destruction of Alexandria's knowledge, or one of many blows, is still contested. Scholars still debate how many texts from antiquity disappeared in these episodes, and whether some may remain hidden in undiscovered caches. Occult traditions have seized on these vanished archives as repositories of forbidden knowledge. Esoteric societies from the Renaissance onward spoke of hidden libraries, secret vaults where texts from Alexandria or even pre-Diluvian civilizations were spirited away before the flames. Myths of the Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx or secret libraries in Tibetan monasteries are direct descendants of this longing for lost wisdom. The idea that ancient truths were not destroyed but hidden has fueled countless quests, both scholarly and fantastical. Beyond Egypt and Mesopotamia, many other knowledge centers fell into silence. The Nalanda University in India, a Buddhist center of learning that flourished from the 5th to 12th centuries CE, was destroyed by invading forces in 1193. Contemporary accounts describe manuscripts burning for months, a grim echo of Alexandria's fate. The Maya codices, bark paper books recording astronomical and ritual knowledge, were mostly burned by Spanish friars in the 16th century. Only 4 survive today. Imagine what was lost. The disappearance of these archives leaves gaps that modern scholarship still struggles to fill. How advanced were ancient astronomical calculations? What philosophies and sciences flourished outside the Greco-Roman world? What unknown civilizations were documented and then erased? Scholars still debate the scope of the loss, but all agree it was profound. There is a haunting quality to these vanished libraries. We can picture them. Rows of scrolls and codices, the smell of ink and papyrus, the murmur of scholars at work. And then, silence. Stone walls remain, the knowledge inside is ash. In a way, the myth of the lost archives persists because it speaks to something deeper, the fragility of memory. Civilizations can build wonders, chart the stars, carve their stories in stone, but if their records fall to flame or conquest, entire worlds vanish with them. Somewhere, perhaps buried or waiting to be unearthed, fragments of these archives may still lie. But for now, they are ghost libraries, their contents known only through whispers. Messengers from the stars, legends worldwide tell of teachers descending from above. Across continents and centuries, ancient myths speak with startlingly similar voices, of beings who came from the sky, imparted wisdom, reshaped societies, and then vanished, leaving only stories carved in stone, sung in ritual, or painted on temple walls. From Mesoamerica to Mesopotamia, Australia to the Himalayas, these legends have fueled both spiritual traditions and speculative theories about cosmic visitors, lost civilizations, or advanced teachers whose identities remain mysterious. In ancient Sumer, one of the earliest civilizations, temple carvings and cuneiform tablets describe the Anunnaki, a pantheon of deities said to have descended from the heavens to shape human destiny. While mainstream scholars interpret these as mythological representations of gods tied to celestial bodies, fringe theorists have recast the Anunnaki as literal sky beings, with advanced knowledge pointing to their roles in agriculture, architecture, and kingship. Scholars still debate whether these myths were purely symbolic cosmologies or encoded memories of cultural contacts now lost to history. Far away in Mesoamerica, the figure of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, appears as a civilizing teacher who arrived from afar, taught agriculture, astronomy, and law, and then departed eastward, promising to return. In Inca tradition, Viracocha, a bearded figure clad in white, emerges from Lake Titicaca to bring order to chaos and instruct humanity before vanishing over the Pacific. While mainstream historians see these as symbolic personifications of cultural shifts, their shared motifs of sky origin teachers continue to intrigue researchers. In Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories, celestial ancestors descend from the stars to shape the land and establish sacred law. In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the Dogon people tell complex stories about beings from the Sirius star system, allegedly with astronomical details that predate telescopic observation. Anthropologists attribute the Sirius knowledge to cultural diffusion via contact with modern astronomy in the colonial era. Yet the Dogon myths themselves are far older, their symbolic layers still not fully understood. Scholars still debate whether this is coincidence, misunderstood science, or evidence of remarkably ancient skywatching. One quirky and enduring case involves the Nazca culture of Peru, whose geoglyphs, as seen earlier, can only be fully appreciated from above. Some fringe theorists, notably in the mid-20th century, claimed these lines were landing strips for extraterrestrials, while archaeologists have thoroughly debunked the idea, pointing to ritual functions. The sheer scale of the lines keeps the idea of sky visitors alive in popular imagination. Occult and esoteric traditions have long woven these sky teacher myths into their spiritual frameworks. Renaissance Hermeticists believed that ancient wisdom was passed down from a lost astral race or spiritual hierarchy residing among the stars. Theosophists in the 19th century reimagined the Anunnaki and similar figures as ascended masters, cosmic guides who seeded human civilizations. Modern UFO religions continue this tradition in new language, turning ancient deities into interstellar travelers. Mainstream scholarship, by contrast, approaches these myths as reflections of human experience, either metaphorical stories about natural phenomena, like stars and comets, allegories for cultural innovation, or memories of contact between distant societies via trade or migration. When a new technology or cultural system arrives suddenly, like agriculture, metallurgy, or writing, oral traditions often frame the innovators as outsiders, sometimes literally frauds. On the sky. Scholars still debate to what extent these shared motifs arise from similar psychological patterns versus genuine interregional connections. What's undeniable is the remarkable consistency of the Sky Teacher archetype. Whether in the Anunnaki descending to Sumer, Quetzalcoatl sailing across the sea, or the Dogon's star-born Nommo, ancient peoples looked upward for explanations of cultural leaps. The stars were not distant balls of fire. They were homes, thrones, gateways, places where gods and ancestors dwelled. Standing under a night sky devoid of city light, it's not hard to understand why. The Milky Way arcs overhead like a road. Comets blaze, meteors streak, stars pulse with uncanny regularity. For ancient peoples, these were living signs, and those who could interpret or embody their power became both revered and feared. Scholars still debate whether the messengers from the stars were purely symbolic constructs or encoded memories of migrations, teachings, or events we've yet to fully uncover. But the myths endure, written across stone, sung in ritual, whispered through centuries. They remind us that for our ancestors, the boundary between heaven and earth was porous, and that wisdom, whether divine, human, or something else, often arrived from above. Graves that curse, unlucky hands disturb sacred ground and meet strange fates. Across time and cultures, the act of disturbing the resting places of the dead has carried with it a shiver of dread. Tombs are not merely graves, they are portals, thresholds between the world of the living and the realm of ancestors, gods, or spirits. To trespass upon these spaces was, in many ancient traditions, to invite misfortune, or worse. While archaeology views such events through the lens of history and disease, legends of cursed tombs persist, their stories echoing across deserts, valleys, and centuries. The most infamous of all is the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter in the Valley of the Kings. When Carter's team broke the seal, they unleashed not just a flood of treasures, but a storm of superstition. Within months, several people connected to the expedition died under unusual circumstances. The most publicised was Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's patron, who died of blood poisoning shortly after the tomb was opened. Newspapers declared it the Pharaoh's curse, quoting a supposed inscription, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Mainstream historians point out that no such inscription actually existed, and many deaths can be attributed to infection, coincidence, or media exaggeration. The tomb had lain sealed for over 3,000 years, harbouring mould spores and pathogens that could have affected the excavators. Yet the clustering of deaths and their timing created a powerful narrative. Scholars still debate whether the curse is entirely a product of 20th century sensationalism or rooted in ancient Egyptian beliefs that tombs were indeed protected by supernatural forces. Ancient Egyptians took tomb security seriously. Protective spells were inscribed on walls, warning would-be intruders of divine retribution. Tomb robbers caught in antiquity often met brutal punishments, but texts also describe supernatural guardians, serpents, spirits, or deities like Anubis, who would defend the sacred dead. Whether symbolic or literal, these measures show a deep cultural anxiety about the boundary between life and death. Egypt is not unique. In China, imperial tombs were often sealed with mercury traps or hidden mechanisms to deter grave robbers. The famous mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, remains largely unexcavated to this day because of high mercury concentrations detected in the soil and fears about damaging both the site and modern excavators. Legend says the tomb contains rivers of mercury and deadly mechanical defences, features that echo the idea of curses, albeit through engineered deterrents. Scholars still debate how much of these tales are legend versus real technological sophistication. One quirky historical episode occurred during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign. Soldiers reportedly entered tombs and took amulets and mummies as souvenirs, many of which ended up in Europe's curiosity cabinets. Some officers later wrote letters describing streaks of bad luck, illness, or death following these plunderings. Victorian society became fascinated with the notion of the mummy's curse, and cursed relics became a literary trope, inspiring Gothic novels and later Hollywood films. Occult traditions embraced the idea that tombs were guarded by spiritual forces, not merely resting places but nodes of power. In some esoteric systems, tomb curses were seen not as mere warnings, but as active magical wards, designed to repel or punish the uninitiated. Ritual knowledge was needed to safely enter, mirroring initiation rites. Modern science offers rational explanations for many cursed tomb incidents: fungal spores, toxic gases, psychological suggestion. Yet even today, archaeologists approach sealed chambers with caution and reverence. They know that tombs are time capsules, containing both delicate artifacts and unpredictable hazards. Scholars still debate why the idea of the tomb curse persists so strongly in modern imagination. Partly it speaks to our deep unease with disturbing the dead. Partly it reflects how the unknown, disease, coincidence, environmental hazards, takes on supernatural form in storytelling. And partly, perhaps, it hints at something older, a collective memory that the boundary between worlds can be dangerous to cross. Standing in a dim, narrow corridor beneath tons of stone, torchlight flickering against walls inscribed with spells, it's easy to feel that ancient gaze. Whether curse or coincidence, the tombs of antiquity command respect. They remind us that not every door in history was meant to be opened without consequence. The stone mover's secret, transporting colossal blocks, remains partly beyond our grasp. All around the world, colossal stones rest in places where, by all logic, they shouldn't be. In temples, pyramids, and megalithic circles, blocks weighing tens, even hundreds of tons were quarried, shaped, transported, and lifted with such precision that even modern engineers pause in admiration. How these stones were moved and set in place remains one of the most persistent puzzles of ancient construction, balancing between brilliant ingenuity and feats that seem almost superhuman. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the classic example. More than 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, each averaging 2.5 tons, were moved and set with near-perfect alignment. Some inner granite beams weigh over 50 tons and were transported from Aswan, nearly 800 kilometers away. Mainstream Egyptology suggests a combination of sledges, wooden rollers, lubricated sand, and massive labor forces, guided by careful planning. Recent discoveries at Wadi al-Jarf of ancient logbooks by overseer Mera support this view, describing teams ferrying limestone along canals. Yet, when it comes to the largest blocks, especially those used in the king's chamber, the logistics remain partly speculative. Scholars still debate whether the blocks were raised via straight ramps, spiral ramps, counterweights, or combinations of methods, but no single theory fits all evidence neatly. Travel across the world to Baalbek in Lebanon, and the puzzle deepens. The Temple of Jupiter, built during the Roman period atop much older foundations, contains some of the largest hewn stones in human history. 3 of these, the famous Trilithon stones, weigh around 800 tons each, and another, still in the quarry, is estimated at over 1,000 tons. Modern cranes would struggle to move them today. The Romans were skilled builders, but exactly how they transported and fitted these colossal stones so precisely remains uncertain. Some propose elaborate systems of rollers and capstans. Others suggest the stones were positioned before walls were built around them. Scholars still debate whether the Romans moved the largest blocks at all, or simply built atop even earlier megalithic foundations. A quirky case emerges in Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia. Here, perfectly cut andesite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together like puzzle pieces, forming interlocking joints with tolerances of less than a millimetre. These stones were quarried from across Lake Titicaca, over 10 kilometres away. How they were moved over water and then precisely set on site remains uncertain. The Tiwanaku culture left no written records, and their methods have been lost to time. Occult and fringe theorists have seized on these enigmas, proposing everything from lost technologies like anti-gravity or sound levitation to help from sky beings or Atlanteans. Ancient texts sometimes describe stones that moved as if by magic or floated through the air at the sound of chants. While mainstream scholarship finds no evidence for such claims, they reflect a sense of awe that ancient builders continue to inspire. In reality, ancient societies likely employed a mix of clever engineering, manpower, and patience. For example, recent experiments in Egypt have shown that dragging sledges over wet sand reduces friction dramatically, making it feasible for teams to move huge stones efficiently. In Easter Island, researchers have demonstrated how Moai statues could be walked upright using ropes and coordinated teams. These insights suggest ancient builders may have mastered techniques tailored to their environments, some of which have simply been forgotten. Still, some details remain elusive. How were 800-ton blocks at Baalbek positioned so perfectly? How did the Tiwanaku builders achieve such exact cuts with stone tools? How were multi-ton lintels raised atop megalithic walls without evidence of large ramps? Scholars still debate these questions, acknowledging that while no supernatural explanation is needed, the full picture of ancient engineering is incomplete. Standing before these monuments, it's easy to feel the weight not just of stone, but of time. Each block represents thousands of coordinated human actions, combined with ingenuity we may have underestimated. Whether dragged, levered, floated, or lifted, these stones are messages from the past, testaments to human willpower, creativity, and perhaps techniques now lost in the sands of history. The star maps in stone. Ancient sites mirror constellations with eerie precision. Across continents, some of humanity's greatest ancient monuments do not simply rise from the earth, they mirror the heavens. Pyramids, temples, and stone circles often replicate the shapes and positions of constellations, sometimes with a level of accuracy that continues to astonish archaeologists and astronomers alike. Whether these alignments were symbolic, religious, or part of a deeper, now lost system of knowledge remains one of the most compelling questions in archaeoastronomy. One of the most famous examples is the Giza pyramid complex in Egypt. Scholars have long noted that the three main pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkore, are arranged in a pattern strikingly similar to the three stars of Orion's belt. This observation, popularized in the 1990s by Robert Bauval, became known as the Orion correlation theory. According to Bauval, the pyramids not only reflect Orion's belt, but also align with the Milky Way and the Nile River, mirroring the sky on the ground around 10,500 BCE. Mainstream Egyptologists acknowledge the general alignment, but reject the proposed dating and cosmic intent as speculative. Still, the precise placement of the pyramids, their stellar orientation, and their alignment to true north suggest an astronomical sophistication that continues to spark debate. Scholars still debate whether the correlation with Orion was intentional design or a coincidental outcome of architectural planning and symbolic orientation. Across the globe, in Mesoamerica, the Teotihuacan complex in central Mexico is aligned to celestial events with equally stunning precision. The Pyramid of the Sun is oriented toward the setting sun on specific dates, and the entire city's layout may reflect the Pleiades star cluster, which held immense significance in Mesoamerican cosmology. Some researchers argue that Teotihuacan's grid incorporates celestial cycles of Venus, the Sun, and the stars into its urban fabric. In Cambodia, the vast temple complex of Angkor Wat, built in the 12th century, is oriented toward the solstice sunrise, but more intriguingly, the arrangement of its temples has been proposed to mirror the constellation Draco as it appeared in 10,500 BCE. While this Draco mapping theory remains controversial, Angkor's precise celestial alignments are undisputed. Its architects embedded astronomical calendars directly into its bas-reliefs and corridors, tracking solar and lunar cycles with extraordinary accuracy. A quirky and haunting case lies at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. Some researchers propose that carvings on its pillars correspond to specific constellations, including Sagittarius, potentially encoding a sky map from around 10,950 BCE, a date coinciding with climatic upheavals at the end of the Ice Age. While mainstream archaeologists are cautious, the possibility that such ancient builders recorded celestial events is staggering. Scholars still debate whether these carvings are genuine star maps or simply animal symbols misinterpreted through modern astronomical lenses. Occult traditions have long embraced the idea that ancient monuments were terrestrial reflections of celestial blueprints. Renaissance Hermeticists spoke of as above, so below, seeing sacred architecture as mirrors of the cosmos. In esoteric thought, aligning structures with the stars was not merely symbolic but a way to harmonize earthly spaces with cosmic forces, turning temples and pyramids into resonant instruments within a universal symphony. Modern archaeoastronomy walks a careful line. On one hand, many alignments are undeniable. Solstice sunrises at Stonehenge, Venus alignments at Mesoamerican sites, and lunar standstills encoded in megalithic circles. On the other hand, some proposed star maps can fall into pattern projection, where constellations are imposed after the fact. Scholars still debate which correlations were deliberate, and which are artifacts of modern interpretation. Yet when we stand in these places, at Giza under a winter night sky, at Teotihuacan as the sun sets on a sacred date, or within the forested corridors of Angkor Wat at dawn, it's difficult not to feel the cosmic intent. These builders didn't merely look at the stars, they inscribed the heavens onto the earth. In the modern world, light pollution and digital screens have dulled our relationship with the night sky. But for ancient societies, the stars were calendars, gods, ancestors, and navigators. To mirror them in stone was to anchor the cosmos to the land, making the heavens permanent, tangible, and sacred. Whispers in the caves. Paleolithic art may be more than decoration. Deep inside caverns, far from sunlight, ancient hands left their marks. Herds of bison thunder across rock walls. Horses leap mid-gallop. Stags lower their antlers beneath constellations of painted dots. Some figures are so vivid they seem to move in flickering torchlight, as though the artists understood how fire would bring their creations alive. These are the Paleolithic cave paintings of sites like Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira, some of the oldest known works of art dating back as far as 36,000 years. For over a century, archaeologists and anthropologists have tried to understand what these paintings mean. Are they mere decoration, hunting magic, spiritual visions, or something else entirely? The Lascaux cave in southwestern France, discovered in 1940 by 4 teenagers and their dog, contains over 600 painted animals and 1,500 engravings. The paintings are astonishingly well preserved. Horses, aurochs, and deer rendered with graceful lines and vibrant ochres, tucked away in chambers accessible only by crawling through narrow passages. Similarly, Chauvet Cave, discovered in 1994, pushed back the timeline of sophisticated Paleolithic art. Its lions, rhinoceroses, and bears are depicted with shading and perspective techniques that wouldn't reappear in human art for tens of thousands of years. Mainstream interpretations have long focused on shamanic and ritual explanations. Some researchers propose that these caves were sacred spaces where paintings served as part of ceremonies to ensure successful hunts or to connect with the spiritual world. Others suggest they were created during trance states, with the artists depicting visions encountered in altered states of consciousness. The placement of images deep inside caves far from daily life supports the idea that these were not casual decoration. Scholars still debate whether the paintings served primarily spiritual, educational, or narrative functions. One quirky and compelling detail involves the patterns of dots and lines scattered among the animal figures. In 2023, researchers proposed that some of these markings may encode lunar and reproductive cycles of the animals, essentially functioning as proto-calendars. By tracking months relative to lunar phases, Paleolithic people may have recorded when animals migrated, mated, or gave birth. If true, this would mean the cave artists were not only storytellers, but also early astronomers and record keepers, tens of millennia before writing. Scholars still debate this interpretation, but it has ignited renewed interest in the symbolic language embedded in these caves. The acoustics of the caves add another layer of mystery. Studies at Lascaux and other sites have shown that painted chambers often correspond to spots with resonant echoes. Some researchers believe Paleolithic artists deliberately chose these areas to amplify chanting, drumming, or vocalizations during rituals, merging sound and image into immersive spiritual experiences. In darkness, broken only by flickering torchlight, the bison may have seemed to move, the walls to breathe, and the echoes to speak. Occult and esoteric traditions have seized on cave art as evidence of primordial knowledge, a universal symbolic language shared by early humanity. Some modern mystics see the caves as gateways, places where ancient shamans communicated with cosmic or underworld forces. While such interpretations are speculative, they echo the undeniable otherworldliness of these spaces. What is clear is that these cave artists possessed both technical skill and symbolic intent far beyond what was once assumed. They mixed pigments from minerals, charcoal, and animal fat. They understood spatial relationships. They worked deliberately in places that required planning and preparation to reach. These were not idle doodles. Scholars still debate the precise meanings, but most agree that these paintings reflect complex cognitive worlds, belief systems, observations, and perhaps proto-writing encoded on stone walls tens of millennia before history began. Standing in a replica of Lascaux today, one feels the weight of time pressing in. The bison's eye seems to follow you. The painted dots cluster like star maps. The echoes of your own breath mingle with a silence older than civilization. These are whispers in the caves, voices from a world where art, astronomy, and spirituality were still one and the same. The serpent's path, ancient mounds trace a cosmic snake on the earth. In the rolling hills of southern Ohio, far from the monumental stoneworks of Egypt or the jungles of Mesoamerica, lies a structure so subtle that for centuries few recognized its scale. From the ground, it looks like a series of gentle rises in the grass, but viewed from above, it transforms into something extraordinary, a serpentine mound, undulating gracefully across more than 400 meters of landscape, its coiled body ending in a spiral tail and its open jaws apparently devouring a celestial egg. This is the Great Serpent Mound, one of the most mysterious earthworks in North America. Radiocarbon dating suggests the mound was constructed sometime between 300 BCE and 1100 CE, though debate continues about its exact age and which culture built it. Some evidence points to the Adena culture, known for their burial mounds, while others argue for the Fort Ancient culture centuries later. What's clear is that the builders were accomplished engineers and astronomers, capable of shaping the landscape with both artistic and cosmic intent. The serpent's form is aligned with celestial events. Its head points toward the setting sun on the summer solstice, while its coils align with various lunar standstills, the extreme points in the moon's 18.6-year cycle. These alignments suggest a deep astronomical awareness, integrating lunar and solar cycles into the very Earth. Scholars still debate whether these alignments were intentional calendar markers, ritual axes, or symbolic gestures toward cosmic forces. Unlike many Adena or Hopewell mounds, the Serpent Mound does not contain burials, which makes it especially enigmatic. Was it a temple, a calendar, a myth carved into the land? Some archaeologists see it as a monumental cosmogram, a physical expression of spiritual beliefs centered on the Great Serpent, a figure that appears throughout Native American mythology. Among many indigenous cultures, serpents represent power, fertility, transformation, and the underworld. A particularly quirky detail is the egg or solar orb shape in front of the serpent's open mouth. Some interpret it as the sun, others as a cosmic egg, or even as a representation of a lunar eclipse. Occult theorists have gone further, seeing it as evidence of an ancient knowledge of celestial mechanics, perhaps even a symbolic depiction of eclipses or planetary alignments. Mainstream scholars acknowledge its significance, but differ on whether it represents a solar, lunar, or mythological object. Scholars still debate its precise meaning. The scale and precision of the mound are remarkable. It follows the natural contours of the plateau, yet maintains a consistent, flowing shape that would be difficult to achieve without planning from an elevated perspective. Some researchers propose the builders used surveying techniques and wooden platforms to map the design before constructing the earthwork. Others suggest a more organic process, guided by ritual performance. Either way, the result is a structure that feels both natural and deliberate, a serpent slithering across the landscape itself. Occult traditions have embraced the Serpent Mound as a power site, aligning it with global serpent symbolism, from Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica to the Ouroboros in alchemical lore. In some esoteric systems, serpents symbolize cosmic energy, winding through the earth like kundalini through the body. The mound, in this view, is not just an image of a serpent, but a channel for terrestrial forces, a sacred geography shaped to resonate with the sky. Mainstream archaeologists focus more on indigenous cosmologies, emphasizing that Native American cultures possessed rich astronomical and spiritual traditions long before European contact. The Serpent Mound likely reflects a fusion of sky knowledge and mythic storytelling, materialized on a landscape that was itself sacred. Standing on the serpent's back today, you can trace its winding body with your feet. At sunset on the solstice, the light falls perfectly along its axis, as it has for centuries. No stones, no towering walls, just earth, sky, and the enduring image of a cosmic serpent devouring the light. Scholars still debate who built it, why they built it, and what precise meanings its alignments held. But the Serpent Mound remains a masterpiece of prehistoric astronomy and symbolism, a myth written on the land itself. The immortal emperor, a hidden army of clay guards, a sealed cosmic tomb. In the heart of China's Shanxi province lies a burial site so vast that it is often described as a subterranean city, a necropolis built to serve Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China in the afterlife. Discovered by accident in 1974 by farmers digging a well, the terracotta army shocked the world. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with unique facial features, hairstyles, and armor, standing silently in rank and file, guarding their emperor's tomb for more than 2,000 years. The scale of the complex is staggering. Over 8,000 soldiers have been unearthed so far, along with chariots, horses, and officials. But archaeologists estimate there are many more figures still buried. Each warrior was once vividly painted, and though the pigments quickly flaked away upon exposure, modern imaging has revealed their original colours: deep reds, greens, purples, and golds, creating a surreal vision of an army frozen mid-March. The terracotta army is only the outer layer of the emperor's tomb. Historical records, particularly from the historian Sima Qian, 1st century BCE, describe the central burial chamber in extraordinary terms. According to his accounts, Qin Shi Huang's tomb contains rivers and seas of liquid mercury, flowing through miniature mountains and palaces to recreate the emperor's empire in miniature. The ceiling was said to be embedded with pearls representing the stars, turning the chamber into a cosmic map of heaven and earth. Modern surveys using ground-penetrating radar have confirmed that the main burial chamber remains sealed. High mercury concentrations have been detected in the surrounding soil, lending credence to Sima Qian's descriptions. Chinese authorities have chosen not to excavate the tomb, both to protect its contents and because current technology cannot guarantee preservation once it's opened. Scholars still debate the exact layout and contents of the chamber, but all agree it is one of the most tantalizing archaeological mysteries on Earth. Qin Shi Huang himself was obsessed with immortality. Historical records tell of expeditions sent in search of the elixir of life, voyages to mythical islands, and alchemical experiments with mercury. Ironically, these may have hastened his death. He died in 210 BCE, possibly of mercury poisoning. His drive to conquer death manifested not only in these quests, but in the construction of an afterlife empire, as grand as his earthly one. A quirky and chilling detail emerges when one considers the booby traps reportedly built into the tomb. Ancient texts speak of crossbows rigged to fire automatically at intruders, along with the deadly mercury rivers. While these accounts may be exaggerated, they reflect the emperor's paranoia and the tomb's role as both sanctuary and fortress. Occult traditions view Qin Shi Huang's tomb through a more symbolic lens. The mercury rivers, the star-studded ceiling, the underground palace, all evoke cosmic microcosm, the ancient idea that rulers mirrored the universe in their monuments. In some esoteric readings, the tomb represents a universe turned inward, with the emperor seated at its axis, surrounded by a silent army to guard his cosmic dominion. Mainstream archaeologists see the mausoleum as the culmination of political power, technological mastery, and spiritual belief. Its construction employed hundreds of thousands of labourers over decades, a feat of organisation rivaling the pyramids. Yet, despite its scale, much of it remains hidden. Scholars still debate whether to open the main tomb. Excavation could reveal priceless information about ancient China's technology, cosmology, and art, but it could also destroy delicate artifacts through exposure. For now, the emperor sleeps beneath an untouched mound, his terracotta guardians above him standing vigil. Standing among the rows of clay soldiers today, one feels both awe and unease. Their blank eyes gaze into eternity, each face a silent portrait of someone who once lived. Beneath them, an emperor's cosmic dream remains sealed, waiting for the day the earth above is carefully lifted away. The labyrinth beneath. Subterranean cities stretch like hidden worlds below our feet. Beneath the dry plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey lies a realm that seems torn from the pages of myth, entire underground cities carved directly into soft volcanic rock, connected by miles of tunnels, stairways, and hidden doors. For centuries, these labyrinths lay forgotten, their entrances buried or disguised. Then, in 1963, a man renovating his house in the town of Derinkuyu broke through a wall and found a passage leading to a vast underground network. What emerged stunned archaeologists: an 18-story subterranean city descending more than 85 meters below ground, capable of housing tens of thousands of people. Derinkuyu is not unique. Dozens of other underground complexes dot the Cappadocian landscape, many interconnected through narrow tunnels. These cities contain ventilation shafts, kitchens, stables, wine presses, communal rooms, and even churches carved deep underground. Massive circular stone doors could roll into place to seal off corridors, protecting inhabitants from intruders. The sheer scale and sophistication of the system suggest careful planning and engineering knowledge far beyond mere temporary hideouts. Mainstream archaeologists date the origins of these subterranean cities to the Phrygian period, 8th to 7th centuries BCE, with expansions during Byzantine times when Christians used them to escape persecution. Others argue that earlier layers may date back even further. Scholars still debate exactly who first carved these labyrinths and how their construction was organized across such a large region. One quirky detail is the ventilation system. Derinkuyu's main shaft runs vertically through multiple levels, providing fresh air to the entire complex, an extraordinary feat of ancient engineering. Even at the lowest levels, airflow remains constant. Some shafts also double as wells, supplying water while being protected from surface contamination. Such features imply not a hasty refuge, but a sustainable underground settlement, possibly inhabited for long stretches. The purpose of these cities remains partly mysterious. The most accepted theory is that they were defensive refuges used during invasions by Persians, Arabs, or Mongols. Cappadocia's open terrain offered little natural defense, making underground cities a strategic solution. But some researchers have noted that the oldest tunnels and deepest chambers may predate these invasions by centuries or even millennia. Scholars still debate whether the subterranean networks originated for defense, storage, religious purposes, or something more unusual. Occult and fringe theories abound. Some claim the Cappadocian labyrinths were remnants of prehistoric civilizations, hiding from cataclysms such as floods or celestial impacts. Others imagine them as ritual spaces, aligned with underground energy lines, or echoing mythic underworld journeys. While these ideas lack evidence, the scale and strangeness of the cities do invite speculation. Cappadocia is not alone in its subterranean mysteries. Around the world, ancient peoples carved underground complexes. The Hypogeum in Malta, seen earlier, the catacombs of Rome, and vast tunnel systems under ancient Cusco in Peru. In some cases, these were clearly tombs or catacombs. In others, like Derinkuyu, they are functional cities, suggesting a cultural pattern. When surface life became dangerous or sacred rites required seclusion, people went underground. The engineering challenges alone are staggering. Digging multi-level cities without modern tools or lighting, ensuring structural stability, and ventilating deep chambers required both ingenuity and communal labour. Yet the builders left no written records explaining their purpose. Today, exploring Derinkuyu feels like entering another world. Narrow corridors give way to vaulted chambers where communities once gathered. Stone doors still stand ready to be rolled shut. In the silence, one can imagine the hum of life below ground. Fires burning, prayers whispered, children playing in carved tunnels while armies raged above. Scholars still debate how these subterranean cities fit into broader patterns of ancient settlement and defense. Were they emergency shelters, long-term homes, or sacred spaces? Their labyrinthine scale hints at more than mere practicality. Whatever their origin, these underground realms remind us that ancient civilizations didn't only build upward toward the sky, they also dug downward into the earth, crafting worlds hidden beneath our feet. The Watchers in the Forest, forgotten stone giants, keep silent vigil through the centuries. On a remote island in the southeastern Pacific Ocean, over 3,700 kilometers from the nearest mainland, colossal stone figures stand scattered across grassy slopes. Their faces are solemn, their eyes once inlaid with coral, their backs turned to the ocean as if guarding something inland. These are the Moai statues of Easter Island, Rapa Nui, enigmatic monoliths carved between the 13th and 16th centuries CE by the island's Polynesian inhabitants. For centuries they have stood as watchers, silent and unmoving, as forests grew and vanished, societies rose and fell, and their makers' stories faded into mystery. More than 900 moai were carved, some weighing over 80 tons, and standing up to 10 meters tall. Each statue is unique, believed to represent important ancestors or leaders. They were carved from the volcanic tuff of Rano Raraku, a quarry where half-finished moai still lie embedded in the rock, as if abandoned mid-creation. Once carved, the statues were transported kilometers across rugged terrain to stone platforms called ahu, where they were erected and sometimes crowned with red stone top-knots, known as pukao. The logistical challenge of moving these giants has long intrigued researchers. Early theories imagined the moai being dragged on sledges or rolled on logs, which raised questions about deforestation and ecological collapse. More recent experiments have demonstrated that statues could be walked upright using ropes and coordinated teams, rocking them side to side in a controlled dance. This technique, supported by Polynesian oral traditions, shows that moving the moai was a feat of communal skill, not supernatural power. Scholars still debate which methods were most commonly used, but the walking theory has gained strong support. The purpose of the moai is equally compelling. Most face inland, not out to sea, which suggests their role was not as lookouts, but as guardians watching over communities, channeling the mana, spiritual power, of the ancestors. When the statues were toppled during later conflicts and societal changes, it likely represented shifts in political and spiritual authority, not a sudden cultural collapse. Scholars still debate the precise sequence of these events, disentangling myth, archaeology, and colonial narratives. A particularly quirky revelation came in recent years when excavations revealed that the moai are not just heads and torsos. Many have full bodies buried beneath the soil, complete with carved tattoos and inscriptions on their backs. Centuries of sediment had obscured their true form, feeding the modern myth of the giant heads of Easter Island. These buried bodies add new layers to our understanding of their meaning and the rituals associated with their installation. Occult and fringe theories have long swirled around the moai. Some claim they were moved through levitation, or that the island was once part of a lost continent like Lemuria. Others tie the statues to ancient celestial alignments, noting that some Ahu platforms align with solstices, equinoxes, or significant lunar events. While many of these claims stretch evidence thin, the astronomical and spiritual dimensions of moai placement are real. The statues and their platforms were not arranged haphazardly. They formed part of a sacred landscape intimately tied to sky and sea. Easter Island itself embodies a paradox. Isolated, resource-limited, and shaped by intense cultural ingenuity, it became a microcosm of human adaptation and eventually vulnerability. Deforestation, competition for resources, and European contact brought dramatic changes. Yet through it all, the moai remain, steadfast, staring, weathering centuries of wind and rain. Standing before a moai at dawn, when mist curls off the grass and seabirds cry overhead, it's easy to feel their presence, not as inert statues, but as silent witnesses. Their faces seem carved with memory itself. Scholars still debate many details: how exactly they were transported, what political structures organized their construction, how their society evolved over time. But no one doubts the profound spiritual power these figures held for their creators. The moai remind us that some of the greatest mysteries aren't hidden underground or in the stars. They stand right before us, colossal and quiet, watching. The script that won't speak. An undeciphered language guards a forgotten civilization. In the vast tapestry of human history, writing is one of our most powerful tools. It allows us to bridge centuries, to hear voices long silenced, yet scattered across the world are scripts that refuse to yield their secrets, systems of writing that have been found, catalogued and studied but remain undeciphered, their messages locked away. Among the most tantalizing of these is the Indus Valley script, a language frozen in time, hinting at an entire civilization's mind and worldview that we cannot yet read. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing between 2600 and 1900 BCE in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, built some of the earliest planned cities on Earth, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and dozens of others. With advanced drainage systems, standardized weights, and extensive trade networks, they were a sophisticated urban society. Yet unlike their Mesopotamian and Egyptian contemporaries, they left no deciphered texts. Their script appears on thousands of seals, tablets, pottery shards, and tools, often accompanied by animal motifs like bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures. Most inscriptions are very short, usually between 4 and 6 symbols. Over 400 distinct signs have been catalogued. Despite decades of study, no one has cracked the code. Mainstream linguists and archaeologists have proposed numerous possibilities: that the script represents a Dravidian language, an early Indo-European tongue, or a symbolic system without phonetic content, perhaps akin to heraldic emblems. Others suggest it might have been partly logographic, with signs standing for words or ideas rather than sounds. Scholars still debate whether the script even encodes a language at all, or whether it was a proto-writing system used for administrative or ritual purposes. One quirky twist came when scientists applied statistical analysis to the script's sign sequences. The results revealed patterns similar to natural languages, not random symbols, suggesting some underlying linguistic structure. Yet, without a bilingual Rosetta Stone or longer texts, decipherment remains out of reach. The mystery deepens when we consider the sudden decline of the Indus civilization. Around 1900 BCE, cities were abandoned, populations shifted, and the script disappeared from use. Whether this collapse was due to climate change, shifting rivers, invasion, or internal factors remains uncertain. Without deciphered texts, we lack the civilization's own voice to explain what happened. Scholars still debate whether their language survived in oral traditions later absorbed into other cultures, or whether it vanished completely. Occult and fringe theories have, unsurprisingly, flourished in this vacuum. Some claim the script encodes knowledge from a lost super-civilization, perhaps even Atlantis. Others see in it spiritual or mathematical codes, maps of star systems, or references to esoteric traditions. These theories lack credible evidence, but they reveal how mystery invites projection. The Indus script is not alone. Other undeciphered systems include the Rongorongo script of Easter Island, found carved into wooden tablets with flowing, glyph-like figures, the Linear A script of Minoan Crete, the Phaistos disc, a single clay tablet impressed with spiraling pictograms, and various proto-Elamite tablets from ancient Iran. Each represents voices cut off, civilizations we can glimpse through their artifacts but not truly hear. What makes the Indus case so haunting is its scale. This was not a marginal culture, it was one of the great early civilizations. Its language might have held insights into trade, governance, religion, daily life, and perhaps connections to other ancient societies. Yet the script won't speak. Scholars still debate whether the key lies in discovering new inscriptions, applying new technologies, or rethinking our assumptions about what writing is. Standing before an Indus seal in a museum, the incised characters look deceptively simple. Tiny animals, abstract shapes, short sequences. But behind them lies an entire worldview we cannot yet access. These are not just symbols, they are locked doors. One day, perhaps, a new bilingual text will emerge from the sands, or an algorithm will reveal a hidden pattern and the Indus script will finally whisper its story. Until then, it remains a silent sentinel of a vanished civilization, guarding its knowledge in perfect, unbroken silence. The tower that reached too high. A vanished monument still casts a mythic shadow. Long before steel skyscrapers pierced the modern sky, ancient Mesopotamia may have hosted a tower so tall, so ambitious, that it burned itself into the collective memory of civilizations. In the Bible, it became the Tower of Babel, a hubristic attempt by humanity to build a stairway to heaven, stopped by divine intervention. In historical reality, it likely referred to the Etemenanki, a massive ziggurat dedicated to the god Marduk in the city of Babylon. Though it crumbled long ago, its image, a spiralling mountain of brick climbing toward the clouds, still haunts our imagination. The Etemenanki, meaning Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, was built and rebuilt over centuries. Its origins may stretch back to the 2nd millennium BCE, but it reached its monumental form during the Neo-Babylonian period under Nebuchadnezzar II, 6th century BCE. According to inscriptions, the ziggurat stood roughly 91 metres, 300 feet, tall, an extraordinary feat for sun-dried brick. It was part of a vast temple complex at Babylon's heart, visible for miles across the flat Mesopotamian plain. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus and Strabo described a 7-tiered tower, accessed by ramps spiralling upward, with a temple at its summit. There, priests performed rituals and watched the heavens. The structure likely functioned as both a religious monument and an astronomical observatory, linking earth and sky in brick and bitumen. The Tower of Babel story in Genesis, written centuries later, echoes these real structures but overlays them with mythic moral themes, human pride, divine intervention, and the fragmentation of language. Scholars widely believe the biblical tale reflects memories of Babylon's ziggurat, recast for theological purposes. Yet beneath the myth, the historical Nanki was very real, and its fate remains partly mysterious. One quirky twist is that by the time Alexander the Great arrived in Babylon in 331 BCE, the ziggurat was already in ruins. Ancient accounts say Alexander ordered it dismantled for rebuilding, intending to restore it to its former glory. But he died before this could happen, and the tower was never rebuilt. Its bricks were likely scavenged over centuries, leaving little visible trace today. Archaeological excavations in the early 20th century uncovered foundations and inscriptions confirming the structure's immense scale, but the tower itself has vanished into dust. Scholars still debate the exact appearance of its upper tiers and the layout of its ramps. Occult traditions have long been fascinated by Babel. Renaissance esotericists saw the tower as a symbol of divine aspiration, a bridge between heaven and earth, echoing Hermetic notions of as above, so below. Others viewed it as a cosmic axis, akin to Mount Meru or the World Tree, a vertical pathway linking human and celestial realms. In some mystical readings, the confusion of tongues represents not punishment, but the diversification of hidden wisdom across cultures, waiting to be reunited. Modern archaeology paints a picture both awe-inspiring and fragile. Constructed primarily of mud brick, the Etemenanki required constant maintenance. Seasonal rains eroded its tiers, and political upheavals left it neglected. Its sheer height was both its glory and its undoing, a tower that reached too high for its material to endure. Scholars still debate how exactly the upper levels were constructed, whether ramps spiraled around or zigzagged up the sides, and how rituals were conducted at such heights. They also debate the extent to which the biblical story preserves historical memory versus moral allegory. Standing at the ruins of Babylon today, amid cracked foundations and scattered bricks, it's hard to imagine the colossal tower that once dominated the skyline, yet its shadow persists, in texts, in myths, in the very idea of human ambition striving skyward. The Tower of Babel, whether as fact, allegory, or both, remains one of history's most potent symbols, a monument to human aspiration, ingenuity, and the inevitable passage of time. The circle that predicts. Ancient wheels and discs encode cosmic cycles in stone and metal. In the misty highlands of northern Germany, a ploughed field in 1999 yielded a find that would rewrite our understanding of prehistoric astronomy, the Nebra Sky Disc. Measuring about 30 centimetres across and made of bronze, inlaid with gold symbols of the sun, moon and stars, the disc dates to around 1600 BCE. Its delicate etchings reveal a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles, long before written records in the region. This single artifact, buried for over 3 millennia, speaks of a world where the sky was studied with reverence and encoded not in books, but in metal and stone. The disc depicts a large golden circle, the sun or full moon, a crescent moon, and a cluster of 7 stars representing the Pleiades. Additional gold arcs along the edges are thought to indicate the solstices, aligning with the horizon at specific points near Nebra. A final golden arc at the bottom, added later, may represent a solar boat, echoing Egyptian imagery of the sun's journey across the sky. This layering of motifs suggests the disc was modified over time, perhaps reflecting evolving cosmological beliefs. Mainstream archaeologists interpret the Nebra Sky Disc as an astronomical instrument, likely used to synchronize the solar and lunar calendars, a challenging task even for later civilizations. By aligning the solstice arcs with the setting sun, ancient observers could mark key points in the year, coordinating agricultural or ritual calendars. Scholars still debate exactly how it was used, whether as a portable ritual object, a teaching tool, or both. The Nebra disc isn't alone. Across the world, ancient peoples created circular structures, wheels, and discs that encode celestial knowledge. In Chanquillo, Peru, a series of stone towers aligned along a ridge forms what many consider the world's oldest solar observatory, dating to the 4th century BCE. By observing the sun's rising position between the towers throughout the year, ancient astronomers could predict solstices and equinoxes with remarkable precision. In Stonehenge, the circle of sarsen stones and its surrounding earthworks form an intricate solar and lunar calendar. Its heelstone aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, while other features track lunar standstills. Meanwhile, in Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, circa 5000 BCE, a modest circle of stones was aligned with the rising sun at the summer solstice, predating Stonehenge by nearly 2 millennia. These circular structures reflect a global impulse to inscribe the sky's cycles into durable, earthly forms. A quirky example lies in the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze device recovered from a Greek shipwreck dated to the 1st century BCE. Though not a disc of stone, this intricate system of gears and dials tracked solar, lunar, and planetary cycles with uncanny precision. It's often called the world's first analog computer. Its discovery shows that knowledge of celestial mechanics wasn't limited to myth. It could be mechanized centuries before modern science. Scholars still debate the full extent of its capabilities and who designed it. Occult traditions view such wheels and discs as cosmic mandalas, physical embodiments of heavenly order. In hermetic and alchemical symbolism, the circle often represents the cosmos, the eternal, and the unity of microcosm and macrocosm. In some esoteric readings, objects like the Nebra disc are not merely calendars but portals of knowledge, connecting ritual practitioners to celestial rhythms. Mainstream scholarship focuses on their observational precision and cultural context. These artifacts and structures show that ancient societies possessed detailed astronomical knowledge, often without writing. They were not passive sky watchers, but active sky interpreters, embedding cosmic cycles in their architecture and tools. Scholars still debate exactly how widespread this knowledge was, whether centralized among priestly elites or shared among communities. They also debate whether similar-looking discs across cultures represent shared human impulses or long-distance transmission of ideas. Today, the Nebra Sky Disc rests in a climate-controlled museum, its gold gleaming under modern lights. But its power lies not in its beauty alone. It's a message from a Bronze Age observer, someone who looked at the night sky with both scientific curiosity and spiritual wonder, and then etched their understanding into something that would endure for millennia. The disc, like Stonehenge's circles and the Antikythera gears, is a reminder that long before telescopes and equations, humans were already reading the heavens with astonishing clarity and leaving behind cosmic maps for us to rediscover. Conclusion. Across deserts, jungles, mountains, and underground labyrinths, these 33 unsolved ancient and occult mysteries whisper the same truth. The past is far more complex, interconnected, and imaginative than we often assume. Whether etched in stone, buried beneath the earth, encoded in undeciphered scripts, or aligned with the stars, each mystery represents a dialogue across time, between the people who built, carved, painted, or observed, and us, centuries later, trying to listen. Scholars offer reasoned explanations, fringe theorists spin myths, and occult traditions weave cosmic tapestries. The truth may lie somewhere in between, or in places we've yet to look. What unites them all is humanity's unending urge to understand the universe, to map the stars, guard our dead, immortalize language, and leave behind symbols that outlast empires. As night falls and the stars emerge, these enigmas remind us that history is not just what we know, it's also what remains unsolved. And perhaps some mysteries are meant to keep us looking upward, questioning, imagining, and listening for the echoes of ancient voices.